All right, everyone. So the season of chaos, the season of unpredictable outcomes, the season of not the standard, not the predictable, has lined up pretty well. Unfortunately, has lined up pretty well. Welcome in, everyone, to the Voice of College Football here on a Saturday night wrap-up show. For those of you who are just joining us because it's championship weekend, playoff time. Hey, we do this every Saturday night from the first week of September all the way through the college football season. And unfortunately, this will be the last time that we'll officially do it. Of course, we're going to be here on Saturdays when there are bowl games and postseason games. But this is our don't shed a tear. Please hold back the tears. This is our last regular season scheduled Saturday night wrap-up show together. So thanks for being here, the Voice of College Football. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football, subscribe to your favorite team channel. We've got 25 team channels, including Iowa, including Michigan, not including Pitt, not including Wake Forest, including Alabama, including Georgia. And so check out your favorite team channel and lock in as well as right here on the main channel. We have completed championship weekend, and this is the way it lines up. Alabama's won the SEC championship. Michigan has won the Big Ten championship. And those two teams are locked for the college football playoff. Georgia, having completed the best regular season despite a loss in the SEC championship, appears to be safe. And then we have Cincinnati, American Conference champion, top 4 team last week that only solidified their ranking with a 35-20 win in the American Conference championship game against Houston. Who do we have left on the outside? Well, we've got Baylor. We have Notre Dame. We have Ohio State. So it seems to be conventional thinking that it lines up perfectly, and the committee will not have to spend the entire night trying to figure out who 1 through 4 are. They can spend the rest of the night trying to figure out 5 through 25, and they'll probably just throw them at the wall because nobody cares past the top 6 or 7. I care, but hardly anybody else cares about those places in the rankings. And they've dodged a bullet. But I would ask this of the live chat. Do any of you have a nomination, a recommendation, an argument, a true solid argument for Notre Dame, for Ohio State, for Baylor, for anyone else making the playoff? And if you do, bring it here at the Voice of College Football. Let me get wired up. Let's get the phone lines going. I wanted to get them going before we started, but I'm a little bit late and tardy. And so I just wanted to fire up the live stream and talk to all of you first and foremost. Let's see who we've got in the chat. And of course, you guys know the deal. We could be here for a long, long time sorting through all this. Had we had some chaos, we would be here all night, I think, sorting through it. But this is where we stand right now. We got BW, Mr. San Diego State, unfortunately bombed, crashed, burned in the Mountain West Conference Championship game without 20 players due to COVID issues there. Exploring with Ben's here. The ACC Championship game culminated with Pitt winning. I believe the final score was 45-21. It was a really close, exciting game at halftime, and then Pitt had 2 big interceptions, 1 a pick 6, and they won easily to finish their season at 11-2. So congratulations to the Panthers of Pitt for an ACC championship, their first ever since they joined the conference. And they will slide near the top 10 in the country with that win. Troop 75's here. Good to see everybody. Good to see everybody. All right, I guess we will just fire it up from here. I apologize for the delay in the show. Let me get this set up. It will take just a second. And if I'm really fast, I won't have to put up with the pathetic. Let me try to do that again. I think that took right. Oh, shoot. Is that the wrong one? Here we go. All right. We're here. Our number is 860-499-3332, 860-499-3332 if you want to talk college football with me. And keep in mind that our sponsor is Get Business Credit. You will hear more from our sponsor a little bit later, but it's Get Business Credit. If you own a small business, want to start a small business, or maybe have one already and it's floundering, or you need financing and you don't know what to do, Get Business Credit. It's right here on YouTube, and we will talk a little bit more about our sponsor later. Let's get to the phone line. All right, here we go. Let's go. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hey, Michael. How are you?
Hi. Not too bad yourself.
I'm good. What'd you think about tonight's games?
I'm not surprised about Michigan. I had a feeling it was going to be like that, but I was surprised about Alabama and Georgia today, though. That did surprise me. What about you?
No, it did not surprise me. Did not surprise me. And I'm not saying I picked Alabama, but I certainly considered it. And like I said last night, I gave them at least a 35% chance of winning. So that was no surprise. It's Alabama. They've got similar talent to, just look at it this way. We've got a coach who's won more national championships than anyone, who's probably the greatest of all time. He's put together a coaching staff, as he typically does, that's arguably the best coaching staff in the country. He has as much or more talent than anybody in the country. So even though they haven't always played well, they have as much talent. And this is what I didn't understand from people's perspective on this game. Alabama has as much, if not more, talent than Georgia. And then on top of that, they've got arguably the best quarterback in the country, where Georgia has a top, 25 or 30 quarterback in the country.
But no, when Oklahoma State lost today, I thought my prediction was going to come to fruition, actually. When I said that Oklahoma State is going to lose, what happens if Michigan loses? What happens if Alabama loses? And then with the Cincinnati and stuff. But 1 out of 25% can beat that, I guess. But no, here's what I'm thinking for my top four. See what you think. I'm going to have Alabama. I'm going to have either Cincinnati or Georgia, 2 or 3, and then Michigan 4. Because I would think a lot of people would actually want to see a rematch between Georgia and Cincinnati. Or do you see Cincinnati staying at 4?
Michigan was number 2 last week. Why would they not be either number 1 or 2?
I don't know. That's my fault. I thought I was going on the other poll. I wasn't going on CF people. That's all my fault. But I don't know. I would like to see a rematch of Georgia and Cincinnati, but I don't think I don't like that. But is there a chance that Georgia and Cincinnati can swap 3 and 4? Or is there a possibility that the CFE can just straight out rob Cincinnati and put in like Notre Dame?
No. There's not.
No, I don't think it's going to be like that either, but I would say, but you never know about it. I was just
well, Cincinnati's the 4th ranked team in the country, and Notre Dame's number 6, and Cincinnati just went out and won a conference championship against a top 25 team that was 11-1. So how would the committee put Notre Dame in?
Sure. But do you think Cincinnati can find up to 3?
Do I think that they'll be number 3?
Yeah. Or do you say the season of 4?
I think they'll stay at 4, but they could be 3.
Mm-hmm. This is wondering and stuff like that. All right. I see. I got to set some few people in the chat straight and stuff like that. All right. Now, one thing I'm trying to figure out, because I'll end up forgetting, what time are you going to be on tomorrow? Noon?
Yeah. Let's hit it at noon. That's when the playoff rankings are going to be unveiled. So we might as well hit it at noon. Mm-hmm. Yep. Noon Eastern.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Michael. Have a good night.
Yep. Bye.
This may turn out to be the shortest show we've ever done. What do you think? We've got Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, Cincinnati. What else can we say here? We can rank them a number of different ways. I really think of only 2 ways. I think there's an argument between 1 and 2, and there's an argument between 3 and 4, and there's really no other argument. You've got Alabama and Michigan. That's the 1-2 argument. And then you've got Cincinnati and Georgia as the 3-4, and there you go. Other than that, certainly there's a debate as to whether Cincinnati even belongs because they play a weak schedule. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's next?
Hey, Mark, it's One Scoop John.
One Scoop John. How are you?
I wasn't even sure what to do with myself. My Wolverines have done it after everybody called Harbaugh laughingstock, after everybody said that it couldn't be done. We finally, after 20 years or 100 years or whatever it was, we finally get a Big Ten trophy. And Hutch with I think the first ever defense, or at least the first in a long time defense MVP. That was pretty cool. Whew. So awesome. I know DeReal MVP wants to call in too, but just real quick, I've been trying to watch all the games while also having to do work all day. So it's kind of going back and forth. I'm going to have to watch a bunch of stuff later, but based on what I saw, I saw most of the Alabama game, and like you, I was not surprised when you have the best coach of all time, when you have just the talent on that team. I think that they were saving some stuff and for this game. Just when you compare and contrast the Auburn game last week and the game this week, just some of the differences between the two, with Georgia having the defense that they have. What do you think about that? I guess, did they have kind of a couple of pages of the playbook saved for Georgia? Because I just feel like Nick Saban did one of those, I won't say the word, but, blank chewing in between Auburn and this week. So what do you think the adjustments were to make this happen?
Well, I'm not going to try to pretend that I know Alabama's playbook back and forth, or that I've been charting their plays all season to know what they ran today that was new. So I really have no idea from that standpoint. I know that they blocked better.
Right.
That's what they did. They may not have ran any different plays. I'm guessing that they did, that they ran a handful of plays or sets that were different, or maybe the same plays from different sets. That's what typically happens, is not trying to install necessarily new plays, but the same plays from different sets to give different looks, and then run the same plays that you run, but from different sets and different formations, so the defense doesn't recognize what they are supposed to be defending. So I would guess that they did that, but the blocking, it's a game of blocking and tackling. So we can talk all we want about Bryce Young was no different today than what he's been all season. He was the same quarterback, just as good, no better,
Yep.
no worse, maybe the best quarterback in the country. And Alabama didn't necessarily have a running game, but they haven't had much of a running game the back half of this season. what they were able to do is block.
Yeah, and really get some of those receivers out in space and make it happen. But
because they could block.
So I was kind of, yeah. So I was kind of thinking of that. And then also, obviously, the game that just happened with Michigan and Iowa, which, I went on record as predicting 24-10, and I've never been happier to be wrong about a prediction in my entire life. I'll take being wrong about that prediction any day of the week and twice on Saturday.
You picked Iowa 24-10?
No. I said Michigan 24-10.
Well, Michigan won the game. I didn't see where you were really wrong.
The differential.
They covered the spread. They won the game. I'd say you were right there.
Well, I still. So what I guess my point is, to the previous caller and kind of what you were starting with about the rankings. I heard, and I wonder if you know something about this, maybe I don't, about how the committee works, but I heard that, and please tell me if this is fake news, that they try to avoid semifinal rematches as it's like beyond just kind of like an unwritten rule, but it actually is like a piece of their protocol. And everything that they do is so shady and shadowy. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, is there any possibility in the universe that we aren't facing the University of Georgia? Because it seems like that's where we're headed. So
to answer your question, of course, they're trying to avoid a rematch in the first round. Right. That just makes good business sense. And it creates a situation where people are more energized and interested rather than saying those two teams just played 3 weeks ago. I don't want to see that again unless they collide for the ultimate, for the championship. Whether that's specifically stated, written somewhere, I don't know that they've ever revealed ever since the initial formation of the committee. They released some kind of document, some kind of statement to the media and to the public to say, this is the formation of our committee. We are selecting a 14 playoff every year, and these are our tenets. Now, they didn't get specific to the place in which they addressed that. So whether it's written down somewhere or they just all know that they don't want to select, they want to avoid it in any possible way. And the way things play out here, they can easily avoid it. So they will. I'd be shocked if Alabama's number 2 and Georgia's 3 and they're going to play the first game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Bama is probably. We know that the committee does love their Bama, and now they have a reason to rank them very, very highly based on the results on the field. So they could put Bama 1, Michigan 2, Georgia 3, Cincy 4. Given the fact that Cincinnati still hasn't. They had a great Notre Dame win. They did. I don't know if they could have done anything better this season than they did. They went out and scheduled Notre Dame. They went out and scheduled Indiana. We didn't know that Indiana was going to stink out loud this year. Last year they did pretty well. And I don't think that there's anything else that they could have done. But at the same time, I don't think that they are going to be ranked any higher than 4, but maybe I'm wrong.
I would like to know when the Indiana-Cincinnati contract was signed. So let's not give Cincinnati too much credit here.
Right.
I'm almost positive that it's been a while since they signed Indiana to play. I don't think that Cincinnati, the administration, the football program, was thinking we need to schedule a top 15 to 20 team in the country to make a push for the college football playoff. I think they were just scheduling a game.
Well, even if, let's say, they did it when Kevin Wilson was the head coach, hypothetically, then even then, that was a pretty strong offensive team. Granted, they weren't world beaters, but I don't think. I mean, I'm definitely not arguing that Indiana is a top 5 powerhouse.
I just found it.
But
2014. So Cincinnati's signing a contract in 2014 to play Indiana in 2021 and 22. So we should not be crediting Cincinnati in any such way with scheduling toward trying to make a college football playoff, because that certainly wasn't the move in 2014 to schedule a team that couldn't even make a bowl game. So I don't buy into the whole Cincinnati's gunning for a college football playoff, and that's why they scheduled Indiana. That's clearly not the case. They're just scheduling a game,
right,
a regional game. That's all they were doing.
That's fair. Well, even if we don't count that and that they did everything that they could,
we shouldn't.
I mean, let's not. So, but to your point, then I don't think they're going to go any higher than 4.
I don't think they will either.
Again, so let's see what happens. But amazing weekend, and I'm going to let you go so you can take the other callers. But great day to be a Michigan Wolverine.
Thank you for the call and congratulations, and we will see you in the first round of the playoffs.
Can't wait. Bye-bye.
Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. So this is Sean.
Hey, Sean. How you doing?
Hey, fancy. I mean, pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. Watched. Other than the fact that I just watched my over bet on the Pitt Wake Forest game that I thought was an absolute lock at 71.5, just wrench away. Other than that, everything else today's been fantastic. My Bearcats are in the are almost certainly in the playoff, and I'll get to celebrate for about a month, about like 40 days before. I guess probably like more like 8 or 29 days before reality sets in, right?
So you don't think you have a chance?
Some SEC juggernaut. I'm sorry. What was that?
So you don't think you have a chance?
A small one. Most likely against Alabama. I mean, the Mechie injury, kind of. I mean, I don't root for players to get hurt ever, so I don't want to rejoice in anyone's pain. But that certainly, I think, gives us a little bit more of an edge. I mean, knowing Alabama, they've probably got somebody better than Mechie behind him. So I don't really know. Some 18-year-old kid who hasn't seen the field all year that everyone will know his name next year. And but I don't know. I think this Bear. I mean, I'm super proud of these guys. These 3 years have been just unbelievable to watch. But no group of guys deserve it more than these, seniors and stuff. And they can rejoice. They can be super proud. But, I mean, the reality is reality at some point, right?
So I guess I'm a bit concerned, or that would be the wrong terminology. I'm just a bit intrigued or interested in your mindset here. So do you really believe that your team deserves a college football playoff appearance? Do you believe that they're one of the top 4 teams in the country?
Well, I'm saying I believe everything the players have done and everything they've worked towards, the group of individuals collectively.
I certainly think that's a great statement for you to make.
Snap the past 3
Absolutely.
Years. I
back that completely. These guys work hard. They achieve a lot. They devote themselves to it. I think that they should be applauded for what they do overall. And then when a team's able to accomplish what this program's able to accomplish over the past 3 to 4 years, and specifically the past 2 seasons going undefeated, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, no, I'm super proud, and whatever the outcome is, it won't change anything how I feel about what these group of guys have given to the university. I just, like the guy Alabama, not a single player on Cincinnati's roster probably got anything more than like a recruiting letter from Alabama. There might not be a single one. I mean, someone might have gotten a call from a GA at some point. It's just, and I mean, I've seen the flaws in this team throughout the season. I don't think Alabama is ever having an 8-point game, is ever having to knock a ball away at the goal line against Tulsa to possibly prevent overtime. I don't think they're avoiding a late rush by a 3-8 Navy team to win. I mean, I think this team can go out there and represent themselves well and be competitive. And I think on like just the right day, the perfect storm, they can maybe pull off one upset against these super elite teams. Two is, I'm going to say it's just flat out impossible. I think they have no chance of winning the national championship at all. But I'm still happy to see them. I'm still, I'm hopeful to maybe make a trip down to wherever they're playing, but because it's kind of a once in a lifetime experience. But
very cool.
I'm excited for what. Yeah, so I'm just super happy about that. I wanted to talk about a few of the other things I saw today. The Big Ten's constantly hailed as the second best conference in the country.
Yeah.
And I just the second best conference in the country puts out a team like Iowa who just, I mean, they look Stone Age on offense. I mean, this is just brutal watching them.
Okay.
I mean, they are pathetic on one side of the football and decent, not phenomenal on the other.
Was there a lot of difference between Was there a lot of difference between watching Iowa play offense this weekend and watching Oregon or Oklahoma State play offense this weekend?
I mean, well,
the answer would be no.
I think Iowa was 100. Iowa is 123rd out of 130 teams in the country.
I understand that. I'm not defending their offense. I'm just saying that they were just as pathetic as Oregon and Oklahoma State were on offense today. It's pretty similar.
But they haven't met. But Oregon and Oklahoma State have been better through the course of a season. They're not 123rd. Both those teams are, in the top 50-ish on offense.
Yeah, against weaker schedules.
I mean, is it necessarily weaker schedules? Or
yeah, it is.
I don't know. I mean, like, this is a weird. It's such a weird year, and now we end up with like the most clear-cut playoff picture we've had since has the playoff picture ever been this? I mean, everyone's coming up with all these scenarios for all this chaos, and now we just know who the four teams are going to be, right?
You're right. We do.
It's.
I would say that 2019 was similar. We knew who the four teams were. Clemson, LSU, and Ohio State were undefeated. Oklahoma was the only one-loss conference champion. So that was clear-cut. We knew going to bed on Saturday night who the four teams were going to be in 2019. And this is similar.
It feels like this is mostly what happens. I think like 2017, there was that big Alabama-Ohio State discussion, right? Ohio State had lost 2 games that season. Alabama had.
I think that there has been a debate every year, excluding this year and 2019. I think every other year there are teams that are left out of the playoff that have as good a resume as teams that are included in the playoff. I think that's happened every year. I know that that's happened every year.
Yeah, and the very first one was probably the most contentious, right? The Ohio State Baylor TCU one.
I don't know why
sort
people
of
just
like,
yeah, exactly. That's what it came down to. That's what the argument was. I don't know why people just bring up Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor, though, because it actually should have been a contention between Ohio State, TCU, Baylor, Oregon, and Alabama. They all had one loss. Why Oregon and Alabama got a free pass is beyond me. I know why, because they were considered to be playoff caliber teams in the preseason. And so the perception remained the entire season while the other teams had to sweat it out.
well, I mean, Alabama won the SEC that year, which was kind of a different scenario. But, we don't need to relitigate,
Sure.
that case over and over again. I mean, it's just, a fascinating, wild college football season. I mean, obviously, we were happy to have it last year, but it just was clearly not the same as anything this season.
Well, I appreciate the call. I better get to some more calls. Thank you so much for calling in. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate everything you do.
Thank you so much for that. And it's great to hear from a Cincinnati caller who I'm sure always thought that you were going to get snubbed out of the playoffs. And so I celebrate you and your team, because that's got to be a great feeling to know you are one of the four. So I don't want that to get lost. So thanks for the call. I appreciate that, and celebrate.
In the process.
All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's the real MVP. How you doing?
The real MVP. You're snoozing tonight.
Well, my team didn't play, but I still took an L. I think my prediction didn't turn out the way it wanted to. It was about as bad as the like ratio of this video. There's 500 people in this stream right now, and there's only 89 likes. Get those likes up, people. We can easily hit 200. That's less than 50% of you guys. So hit that like button. But you said, I don't understand why people chose Georgia and thought it was going to be a Well, looking at the common opponents Alabama and Georgia played, seeing that Alabama struggled recently while Georgia was firing on all cylinders, the data showed Georgia was going to win. Along with Vegas, they had Georgia as the favorite. But Alabama, they just hit on all gears today, and credit to them. They were the better
just to
team
clarify
today.
my perspective on it, I picked Georgia to win, so I'm not disagreeing with that. I am disagreeing with the comments I believe you made. Was your score 42-14?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I remember that. So I just had issue with people that said Alabama didn't have a chance, or Alabama was going to get blown out. That's what I just thought was crazy. I picked Georgia to win, but I certainly gave Alabama more than a chance. I gave them a legitimate shot at winning, and what transpired today did not in any way surprise me at all.
Well, when I was feeling real confident when the score was 10-0, I thought, oh, this is exactly how the game's going to go. I'm good. And then Alabama just turned it on, and touchdown. That second quarter really killed Georgia. But I thought Alabama wouldn't be able to run the ball at all against Georgia, because they showed they couldn't run it against LSU and Auburn. And Georgia has a much better rush defense than both of those teams and other teams they play. And I thought Bryce Young would probably get sacked a few times in the game, and he wouldn't have time to make deep threats and plays, and he would have to go dink and dunk and would have an interception or two just because he couldn't sustain methodical drives with a bunch of pressure. But no, it was Georgia who collapsed. There was that one play, Stetson Bennett was at the 19-yard line, and he threw that interception. It was like, what was it? It was a two-score game. I think it was 38-24 or something like that. I was like, oh, man, it's over. And you just shut it down right there.
Yeah.
So, But you know what, Mark, does bother me, though, is all the Bama fans now saying that they're the national championships. They still got games to play, right?
Well, they've got
Bama still
games
has
to play, and
play,
you
right?
are correct. They hopefully have 2 difficult games to play, or maybe just 1, but I can't fault them.
I can't fault them either, but they're the clear favorite.
Based on history,
Clear favorite.
based on what they've accomplished under Nick Saban, I cannot fault them for being arrogant. Is that a good quality to have? No, it's not. It's a horrible quality to have, arrogance, but I can't fault them.
And Mark, let's be honest, they only got 1 real game. I mean, Cincinnati's basically a bye. I wouldn't be surprised if the game was 35-0.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But
don't you, when you watch Georgia and Alabama play in particular, but we could go to a number of conference championship games, especially in the Big Ten, and maybe Iowa's not the best team to look at, but you know what I mean? Those top caliber teams from whatever conference they are, but especially in the SEC. And then you go flip over to the American Conference and you just look at the athletes on the field. It just looks like you're watching, like you just turned off the NFL game and you're watching something. Yeah, it is a different version of the sport.
So, and I think this move might hurt the group of 5 having them in there, because there's going to be people, and I guarantee in the back of the playoff committee's mind, that says they're going to have a team like Coastal Carolina or something that's right on the bubble of the 12 season. And they're like, well, you know, Cincinnati, we gave them a shot against Alabama. They got crushed. So maybe we should put this 3-loss Power 5 team instead of the group of 5 team in there.
Yeah. There are going to be people in that committee room tomorrow, or late tonight, I should say, that are going to make statements. Not that I would think that they would say we can pull the trigger and do this, but we'll say, you know, who really are the 4 best teams in the country? And they'll say something like, I don't know, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State. Are those the 4 best teams in the country? And they'll all kind of look at each other and say, well, we can't do that, obviously. Let's do what we have to do.
I think also another thing I want to think about is we need to stop sleeping on Michigan. Alabama, Georgia being the national championship. I've seen that a lot, and I understand why it's a popular pick. Michigan's a really good team.
They are.
It would not shock me if they beat Georgia.
No.
Any way, shape, or form. And Mark, let me ask you this. If Georgia loses, they already lost to them. If they lost to Michigan in the first round, what would the Georgia fan and what would the media like? Because they go from the number 1 team, crown them, they're the champions, to complete failure.
Well, what's amusing about that situation is Kirby Smart and the Georgia program will be under a lot of criticism and scrutiny. That, okay, you didn't get it done again. This was supposed to be the year. You look like the best team, and then you fell flat on your faces. But what do you do with that? You can't fire the guy. Of course you don't fire the guy. The guy's doing a bang-up job. Who do you replace him with? Of course. So you just got to say, keep trying. Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, there were some Georgia fans I saw that were on the fire Kirby Smart bandwagon. I think that's crazy. Yesterday we fired Martin Cristobal. Today we're firing crazy.
Those people are morons. That's all you can say about that. These are the people that I would like to follow them to their job. Are they doing their job as well as Kirby Smart's doing his job? It's just crazy to think that one of the 2 or 3 most successful coaches in the country is going to get fired. Who are you going to replace him with? He's bringing in the best recruiting classes in the country. Yes, he lost. I understand the disappointment, but
he lost to the greatest coach and the greatest team.
Yeah,
every year. It's not like he's losing to Joe Schmo down the street, or ETUSA or Vanderbilt or Kentucky or Arkansas. He's losing to legit teams, the best teams every year. He won a playoff game. How many coaches have won a playoff game? Like 5?
Not too many. Something in that range. We could count them. Not too many.
Yeah. Yeah, congratulations, Alabama. I was completely wrong. I'm never betting or picking against Alabama again. Georgia, you've replaced Michigan in the category of I will not care what you do. You can be 13-0, but as long as you haven't beaten Alabama, I don't care. Because you remember, that's where they're at. You know how I'll put Michigan in until they beat Ohio State, they haven't proven anything to me. That's where Georgia's at. Do you agree with that, Mark?
They haven't proven anything. They've proven to me that they're extremely good. Let me put I'm not buying into them fully until they get over that hurdle. What has Michigan accomplished that Georgia has not accomplished? Georgia's accomplished more than Michigan has.
Yeah, but I'm just terming in terms of, will I fully believe in that team? Can they win it all?
So you believe more in Michigan's program than Georgia's program? I don't.
I think Michigan is more likely to win the national championship because they haven't played Bama and they don't have to face Bama every year.
No.
Barring
I'm still going to take Georgia in that wager anytime. If somebody wants to say who's going to win more national championships in the next 5 years, I'll take Georgia over Michigan. I understand Michigan.
Take Bama for 5 for 5.
I understand Michigan cleared a hurdle, but Georgia's already been there, done that. They've already made a playoff. They already won a college football playoff game. They've already won the SEC. They've already done all those things that Michigan just accomplished tonight. They've already done those things.
Yep. But have they beaten Bama?
No, they haven't beaten Bama. But they have been there. Michigan is just in the last 2 weeks given us a sampling of that level of football. Georgia's been playing at that level for 4 years. Michigan is just reaching that level of football. And we think they are.
Well, maybe I'm overreacting a bit, Mark. I might be overreacting. Well,
I get your point. And Michigan, for as impressive as they were tonight, they were playing Iowa. What they did last weekend, that was the true test. So they did that once. And I don't want to take anything away from Michigan, but I'm not putting them on the Georgia line yet.
Well, Mark, you know what the beautiful thing is they're probably going to play Georgia.
Oh, that'll be fun.
And it will be determined. It'll be determined on the football field.
Yep.
Because it's Bama 1, Michigan 2, Georgia 3, Cincinnati 4, Notre Dame 5, Ohio State 6, Baylor 7, maybe flip-flop Baylor, Ohio State.
And I really don't know if I have any rooting interest in this entire playoff. My blood pressure is not going to be raised by 1 point watching these 3 playoff games. I'm just going to sit there and I really don't know what to tell you. I was about to tell you I'm rooting for Cincinnati to win. I guess I am. I'll root for Cincinnati to win as much as I
That's
root.
Not going to happen.
No, of course it's not going to happen. No, they're not going to win the national championship, but I can always root. I root for the Cleveland Indians for 40 years to win baseball games, and they didn't. So I can still root, but I'm not even going to really be rooting for Cincinnati. I've got no rooting interest. I'm rooting against Michigan. I'm rooting against Alabama, and I would otherwise be rooting against Georgia, but I got to root for somebody, and those are the 3 legitimate teams. So I'm having a tough time coming up with anything in this playoff here.
And did you hear that Alabama's wide receiver, number 8, I know it's his number. I don't know. I forgot his name.
John Mechie.
It seems like he's torn his ACL.
Yeah.
How do you think that'll impact? It's not going to impact Bama the first round, but how will it impact whoever they play?
Heavily.
Because he is a decent threat.
He's their second best receiver. Arguably, maybe their best. And he's right there. So, all right, man, I better keep it moving here. I appreciate the call.
Yeah, hit the like button, guys. Hit the like button.
There you go. Straight from the real MVP. Thank you so much. Have a good one. All right. Want to remind everyone, Let's do it. I got to line up my banners here. Let's do it after this phone call right here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Ben. How are you tonight?
Hey, Ben. I'm good. I wanted some chaos, so that was disappointing. Man, we were supposed to have like a rip-roaring, beat the table, screaming, yelling at each other type of show tonight. And it's just not. I've heard from a couple people in the chat that say certain teams.
If you tried.
What's that?
You couldn't upset me tonight if you tried. I got to watch the pregame. I'm the post-game of that championship here for the Big Ten, and I'm as happy as you could be.
I'm sure you are.
So I wanted to talk about three things tonight that I hear people talking about today watching football. One, the one that kind of bugs me the most is they're talking about the Alabama win over Georgia. Granted, Georgia's a great team, but I feel personally, Georgia didn't go into their locker room tonight all crying and moping like you would if like a typical team that just lost all hope for when they still have a shot of a national championship. And I just don't think the motivation level was, they didn't look like a team that was just getting, emotionally on the sideline. They didn't look like a team that was facing that loss, to me anyways. I didn't think at least I didn't think so anyways. And I kind of feel that kind of gets overlooked. I mean, Georgia was in the playoffs, win or lose. So, I mean, I don't know. A lot of people talk about the motivation for, like, Michigan having hangover and all this other thing. But, I mean, what about motivation for Georgia to go out there and give it their all because risk injury when they're already in the playoffs? What do you think?
Well, I think what you say makes sense to a certain extent. Yes. The picture that you painted at the beginning is accurate, that they were the only team in the country. They could lose today and basically know that they were going to be in the playoff. So that takes an edge off to some degree. It has to. Maybe it plays in a team's, it could possibly play in a team's to their benefit because they would be more loose, more ready to go, more just let's go out there and have fun and play hard and see what happens and not be tight and not feel the pressure. Mm-hmm. So you can look at that both ways, and we could argue all night about which it is, because it depends on the team, depends on the coaches. There are umpteen examples throughout history that would favor both sides of that debate. But on the other hand of that, you have now, if they would have lost to Alabama 45-7 tonight, I would have thought, okay, either there's some kind of SEC conspiracy working here, or they just really thought, hey, we're in, we're not getting hurt. We just have no edge, no motivation, no fire, no inspiration, and they just got flattened. But they competed. The game was a game until about 10 minutes left. So I don't know that a team can compete against Alabama that well without being fired up and motivated. Especially since I would think that they would have an incentive if they respect Alabama, and if they don't respect Alabama, then they are knuckleheads, that they would have the motivation to say, if we go out there, we take care of business, we win this game, we knock them out, we don't have to see them again. We've won. We've cleared them out of the path to the national championship. If we think this is the best conference and they're the second best team or the best team or whatever, we get them out of the way, as opposed to, oh, we got to deal with them again. So that's the only place where I don't necessarily disagree with you, but that's just a different perspective.
Well, I mean, that's what I mean. I see that as being a very real pop, especially when the chips are down. And I think the mentality is very easy. Like, if I was in that position, like if you're down, once the chips are down, and either fight back or be like, just not give it your all at that point. That you would fight for every bit, everything you could if it was going to knock out of the playoffs. And that's just kind of where I think it could have could have been that situation. And I'm not saying it was. I'm just saying that it hasn't been discussed. That's one thing that kind of annoys me. It wasn't. Nobody even thought that even before the game, not even just during the game. Right? Nobody even thought that, hey, Alabama's in no matter what, so their motivation could be in question.
Who didn't talk about it?
The one thing.
How much do you watch me?
What's that?
Wait a minute.
Wait
a minute. Your comment is that nobody talked about if Alabama loses that they could possibly.
Nobody in mainstream media.
Okay. Well,
hey, you're reasonable.
You know how much
you're a reasonable
you should be watching those people. I've said that a million times that Alabama may lose this game and still make the playoff. We'll never know now, but.
No, I'm not even talking about. I heard you say that. I know. I'm just talking about. People weren't talking about Georgia's emotional approach to this game like they were Michigan's this all week. All I heard, Michigan's coming off this game. They're emotional. It's a trap game. They're, that's all I heard, and I didn't hear at all about the Georgia game, which is I thought it was more likely for Georgia to not give it their all than Michigan. That's all. And so anyways, I don't want to get on that too much. My other big thing is still with Cincinnati. If they let Cincinnati into the playoffs, and this is my biggest gripe about it, then they just gave a formula for a team, any Power 5 team, which say you could list Ole Miss, Michigan State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, any team that's a strong team to just move to a AAC conference or Sun Belt and dominate and just schedule one good game.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Because that's the formula. I know, but that's the formula to get in.
Well,
I mean, that's what they're saying.
Every school that you just mentioned, if they made that move, they would lose tens of millions of dollars every year.
Yeah. No, I know. And realistically, that's not going to happen. But if it wasn't the case for money and the move, moving, like, if a team kept their, program and went to the ACC or something, I mean, the AAC, they could do the same thing that Cincinnati did. I mean, it's nothing against Cincinnati. I mean, those guys, to take a program and to recruit and do what you did with that team, it's hats off to them. They're a tough team, but it's just, I think it's disrespectful to all these, like Ohio State should be above them. Ohio State played a way tougher schedule. They're a better team, but I think it's disrespectful to those teams that actually play tough components week after week, and those players.
You're right. There is no good answer, because for those people that are Group of 5 proponents and say Cincinnati needs to be rewarded, they beat Notre Dame. Okay, they beat one good team. Wow. Okay, great. And to think that for the majority of the season, for anybody that was pushing Cincinnati, they were actually mentioning as part of their resume that they beat Indiana. Now, can you imagine? It's not stated that Michigan should be in the playoff because they beat Indiana, or Ohio State should be in the playoff. That's like the 10th point on their resume. It's like completely dismissed because Indiana sucks. Indiana's horrible, and Cincinnati barely beat them. So on one hand, I am right there with you. I would love to know the Vegas lines, and maybe there's a site that does that, because sometimes you'll see people will post what the Vegas line says for this mythical game. I would love to throw out about 10 teams across the nation, some of the teams that you just mentioned, Ohio State, Ole Miss, teams like that, and say, and not that I'm a complete proponent or believer in the Vegas line, but it is an indication they do know what they're doing, to say, what would the line be on an Ohio State Cincinnati game, Ole Miss Cincinnati game, and fill in the blank. And I guarantee that Cincinnati's an underdog against probably close to 15 teams in the country, probably 10.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would agree. I would think, and I don't think they're going to be. I don't think when if they put them in the college football playoff, is there a game that they're not going to be an underdog in? Is there a game that what do you think the Vegas lines are going to be?
Oh man, that's a good one. Well, versus
what other teams would have,
If they're playing Alabama, they're going to be are they going to be like a 12-point underdog? And if they're playing Georgia, probably close to the same, a 10-point underdog, and maybe Michigan, it's going to be more like a touchdown. I don't know. I'm usually pretty good at guessing the Vegas line when they're actual games, but I've got a much better feel for the Power Five. But just think about this, and I'm just adding on to what you're already talking about. And I want to make this clear. We just had a Cincinnati guy call us, and he's happy, but he even believes his team doesn't have a chance. It's funny. What fan base, it's not Michigan, it's not Ohio State, it's not Georgia, it's not Alabama, fill in the blank, whose team makes the playoff and calls in and says, man, I'm so happy, I'm celebrating, but we don't have a chance. So that tells you something right there. So I feel for Cincinnati. Like, I was the guy who sat here 2 consecutive years with UCF and was saying, we need to do something with this system, because I would like to see teams either get rewarded in some way in which they have a place in an expanded playoff where we don't have to sacrifice all these other teams that have played tough schedules, or go play your own playoff in the group of 5, something. But so they've earned it. I don't know why I got knocked off there for a few seconds, but they've done everything they can. They've faced the schedule that they faced, and they won every game. But at the same time, let's not kid ourselves. My goodness, if Cincinnati played in the SEC West, and if you gave them Alabama's schedule and they had to play Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Tennessee, Florida, they played all those teams consecutively, or they played what Ohio State's played the back half of the schedule when they had to play Penn State, Purdue, Nebraska, Michigan State, Michigan in a row. These games that they've played where they're barely beating Navy and Tulsa and Tulane, and there's no way they survive. They're not losing less than 3 games in either one of those schedules. I'm sorry, they're not.
Yeah, I mean, and it is one thing to prepare for a big game,
yes,
but to have to go game after game after game against a good opponent. I mean, they've already proved they could barely hang on to their AAC, counterparts, multiple games.
So I'm going to balance out the argument. And to your point, they geared up for a Notre Dame game, and they showed in a one-game scenario against what's Notre Dame? Are they the 5th best team in the country, the 8th best team in the country, something in that range, that they're that good, that they can play at that level, and they won the game. So I don't want to take away from that accomplishment, but they had to do it once, and other teams had to do it 4 and 5 and 6 times. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's, well, and this is the place I'm coming from. I think Ohio State deserves, I do not wish any success on Ohio State as you're rooting against Michigan, but they deserve to be there more. I mean, and I'm happy for Cincinnati, and it's going to be interesting, and I hope they can win, get a win. That'd be great. But I just feel, I mean, coming from, when I look at it, I just can't see, just like you said, I mean, and I'm just going to go, I guess I have to go back to that. The system needs to be fixed. They need to do something, because I don't see. They did everything they could, but I don't see their schedule deserving of them being there because just like you already said. But hey, Mark, I'm gonna let you get another call. I had a couple other things, but I've already taken a lot of your time. I always appreciate talking to you, and good luck on you guys' bowl game.
Well,
but
thanks for the call.
I say that.
Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good
night.
All right. Bye.
All right. Super chat coming in from Greg. We appreciate that so much. Hey, Mark, how would you rank the top 4 if you weren't taking into account a Bama-Georgia rematch? I got you. Not trying to avoid that. I really would need to sit down and compare Alabama and Michigan's resumes because I think they're close. But off the top of my head, giving it a quick scan. So again, if you're putting me in the college football playoff committee, or maybe better yet, you're firing those 13 and just letting me decide, I would really have to grind through those schedules to do due diligence to Michigan and Alabama. But off the top of my head, I go Alabama 1, Michigan 2, Georgia 3, Cincinnati a thin 4. And I'm pretty confident with that ranking right there. Appreciate that so much. Super chat coming in right there. Thank you for that. Greg, also super chats coming in that I posted to the screen from Beans and from Don. So thank you for those contributions. Also, folks, there it is. I've got a small business. You may have a small business. You may have an idea, a desire, a passion, a plan to start a small business and don't know where to start, need the financing because with certain small business, obviously, there's the thought that, hey, I want to do A, B, and C, and I don't have the money for it. So financing can be an issue, but that's why you got to check out our guy, Josh Van Horn at Get Business Credit right here on YouTube. Head on over there, Get Business Credit. It's going to be worth your time. His channel is blowing up because he's helping all sorts of people, entrepreneurs and others who either already have started a business and need financing or want to start a business and don't know where to begin. So head on over there. Josh has access to thousands of lines of business credit. It doesn't matter what your own personal credit looks like, or you don't have to give up your social security number. Head on over to Get Business Credit right here on YouTube and do it soon. Cincinnati, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia. I had 2 of those 4 at the beginning of the season. I bet you can't guess which 2. Notre Dame almost made it. They were in my final 4 as well. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Good evening, Mark. It's Kevin, Dallas, Georgia. How
Kevin,
you doing?
I'm doing well. You got to be feeling good tonight.
Well, as I always say at nauseam, hey, my heart runs crimson. And that being the case, Mark, I just want you to know, full disclosure, did I feel that we were going to win this evening? Yes. Did I feel it was going to be by the margin that it was? No. A tale of the tape, who has more 5 stars, Georgia or Alabama? Georgia. Who has more 4 stars, Alabama or Georgia? Alabama. Who has more 3 stars, Alabama or Georgia? Alabama. But when it's all said and done, the edge as far as coaching, Alabama. The edge as far as quarterback, Alabama also. So, I mean, that was pretty much what was the deciding factor in the game.
True.
As far as tonight was the best all-around game. Not the 100 pass PIs withstanding, Mark. The best defensive game that Alabama's played this year. Yeah. So And then also I want to, kudos as far as Bill O'Brien because, hey, I did send his resume as far as the Indeed.com because, hey, no as far as spicing up the offense until this evening. And I'm not going to give him any credit as far as holding back as far as for tonight. But it was a blessing that, hey, we were able to tweak a little bit of things on offense, and hopefully we'll be able to do that over these next two games. Going back to the Cincinnati caller, Mark, I think we might need to have to pull him off the ledge because that scared me. I mean, if I ever fix my mouth to speak as an Alabama fan, as a Cincinnati fan spoke, I would have to definitely be on suicide watch, Mark. And one thing I have to correct them on as far as Jerome Ford transferred from the University of Alabama. So as far as the starting running back for Cincinnati transferred from Alabama, he would have been a part of the rotation now. But, hey, as we all know, whether it's old math or new math, 8 can't go into 1. So he was one of those 8 running backs in the stable, so he decided to transfer out. And I was going to ask you, Mark, as far as do you see Alabama playing in Texas or Florida as far as their first round in the playoffs?
I would have to admit I had no idea where the playoff games were. So Texas, Dallas, Florida, Miami. So I would think that if the seeding lands the way I think, which is Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, Cincinnati, and we've got a Cincinnati, Alabama, then we've got Michigan, Georgia. There's not a scenario where they need to keep one of those fan bases, where they have to avoid a semi-home field advantage. So that's not a factor. So I really don't know. I would just be guessing of which way that's going to be determined. I can't think of anything that's...
Preference, Mark, would be Alabama going to Texas because, full disclosure, Alabama will travel to Jerry's World, but they will not travel to Hard Rock.
Why?
And then as far as the Georgia fans, I mean, they travel anywhere, but I would say Georgia would probably be more inclined to travel to Miami. So.
Why are Alabama fans not going to Miami?
It's just been the case, Mark. It's like it's a doggone force field heading any further east than Atlanta. Now, Atlanta, as far as Mercedes-Benz, is called Bryant-Denny East. And then as far as New Orleans, it's called Bryant-Denny South. And then as far as Jerry World is called Bryant-Denny Southwest. But we won't travel as far as the Palo Alto, and we won't travel as far as Miami.
Well, I got to say that if you're just looking for not even necessarily entertainment, we could go on about what the entertainment scene looks like in those two locations. But if you're going to be more so looking for good weather, it's going to be more so guaranteed, obviously, in Miami than it is in Dallas the first week of January.
That is true. But it's just more so. And then I also have to look into it as far as Professor Rat Poison himself. He would prefer probably Texas as far as Miami because he would look at Miami as having more distraction. So,
sure.
Miami and New Orleans are places in which Professor Rat Poison don't want his players to be in unless he has no other recourse. And then as far as the Michigan guy is concerned, have you heard anyone, Mark, cast aspersions against Michigan? I mean, I thought, if anything, as far as this weekend, it was going to be more so as in this was going to be the coronation this weekend instead of, okay, Michigan was going to drop the ball. I mean, so.
Are you talking about this past weekend, what we just experienced?
Well, just as far as a few hours ago, as far as the Big Ten championship. That I thought it was just going to be a coordination as far as this evening. I mean, the dragon that was slain was supposed to be Ohio State.
Sure.
So, that being the case, I mean, who stated that it was going to be that Michigan was going to look past Iowa and looking forward to the playoffs? I mean, I didn't hear anyone say that. If anything, I heard this past week was that Alabama was supposed to be playing not the University of Georgia as far as this past evening, but they were supposed to be playing a combination of the 85 Bears, Purple People Eaters, steel curtain, as well as the doomsday defense, all in one. Oh, my bad, and also the Ravens led by Ray Lewis in one evening. But for whatever reason, they didn't step through that door, and they wound up losing by 17 points.
Well, to your first point, we talked about it a number of times here ad nauseum about Michigan's mental mindset leading into this game against Iowa. So I thought it was a reasonable conversation or thought. I didn't really buy into it myself, but I didn't think it was ludicrous to think that a program and a team that finally won a game that is still, if you're ingrained in a rivalry like that, it's still bigger than other games. It's bigger than the Big Ten championship by most people's accounts, that all you had to do is look at the scene at Michigan Stadium after that game. I have rarely seen a scene like that, that you know that there is a concern that a team that got that high, that amped, was that laser focused on slaying the dragon, is going to have to get themselves refocused and rehyped up to take on another game. So I think it's a legitimate concern. I didn't factor that into my prediction. I picked Michigan to cover the points and win the game fairly easily.
Would it be safe to say, Mark, that this is a different Michigan team than any of the teams that Harbaugh had?
We know that now. we haven't known that the whole season, though. We just found that out last Saturday.
And it pains me to do this, Mark, but I have to, although I always tell my Alabama brethren that I reside in Georgia, but I live in Alabama. And I have to say this as far as the University of Georgia is concerned. You know, nothing makes my heart happier than seeing a Georgia man or woman that's a fan looking like they just sucked on a lemon. I mean, that made my evening, and it's also going to probably have me called out of the classroom every day next week, but that's another story for another time. But the one thing that's going to be interesting about this Georgia team from here on out these next two games is that Coach Smart spoke with 19 guys, 19 seniors, and asked them to come back. And the end game was to win a national championship. So my question as far as to Georgia fans as well as the Georgia team, and that is, are you all going to step up these next two games? Because if not, it would be mission unaccomplished. And will he be able to be Rasputin again and talk guys into not foregoing the NFL draft as far as in the future?
All right. Anything else, Kevin?
And what up?
Yes.
Yes, sir. I just want to ask you one question. Going as far as to the slow lane real quick, Mark, and it's just in reference to the thing that just blew me away last night, and that was, do you have any opinion on the transfer of Quinn Ewers?
All right. So he made a decision to reclassify himself from 2022 to 21, went to Ohio State. Unless he was getting bad advice, he should have known that he had no chance of winning the job. He showed up mid-August. So he's competing with quarterbacks who had been there the previous year, even though they didn't play on the field in games for the most part. They've been in the system. And so it would have been one thing had he shown up before spring practice, had the spring, the summer to prepare to reasonably compete for the job, but he did not. Therefore, he should have had no expectation to play this year. All right. So then he's trying to compete for the next year's job. I got to think that he would also understand that most likely all you'd have to do is look at recent history and see, do I really expect whomever wins this job this fall to fall flat on their faces, or do I expect them to be near Heisman Trophy candidate Justin Fields, Dwayne Haskins, JT Barrett type a prolific player. And even though JT Barrett, from a throwing standpoint, is not in the class of the other two, you get what I mean. The offensive player of the year in the Big Ten 2 times. I just don't know what he would have expected there. So this situation should have been something that would have been anticipated. You're going to be far behind a guy that has established himself as a top flight quarterback. That should have been understood. That should have been expected.
And that being the case, Mark, do you feel that he, whether it's parents or, for lack of a better term, handlers or the university, may have given him a disservice by not making the picture so clear that even Stevie Wonder could see what was going on? Because, hey, you painted a picture, Mark, and any other freshman, should have been still a senior in high school, should have seen that and said, hey, let me go on and finish out my senior year of high school. And then, hey, Jack Miller's going to exit stage left anyway. And then it'll just be a matter of me competing as far as with McCord as well as Stroud.
Yeah, again, I think it would have been a much different scenario had he gone in, because nobody had experience going into this season. But he would have had the spring and summer to reasonably compete for the job. And then that's a completely different situation. He didn't have that. And this is the result.
Unfortunately, it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. And in regards to Mitchell, real quick, Mark, and that's, when it's all said and done, in order to win these last 2 games, the classes of 20 and the class of 21, which the class of 21 is supposed to be the all-time greatest recruiting class in the history of recruiting as far as University of Alabama. And that being said, those receivers, 5 stars, 4 stars, will have to show up. So Ja'Cory Brooks, Christian Leary, et cetera, y'all going to have to step up. Thanks, as always, for indulging, Mark. Take care, and, hey, look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you. Same to you now.
So as Kevin just mentioned, and this is the first name that came to mind when asked about John Mechie, Ja'Cory Brooks. All you had to do is watch the end of the Auburn game to see what he's capable of doing in the clutch. So from an athletic standpoint, we got to see what he's capable of. And from a clutch standpoint, he stepped into one of the greatest rivalries in college football. And with 20 seconds left in the game, makes a brilliant catch to send the game into overtime. For those of you who believe in recruiting rankings, I just looked this up. Cincinnati's 4 recruiting classes that comprise this roster. Of course, there's a 5th. There are 5th-year seniors, but you get a clear picture from these 4 recruiting classes, 2018 through 21, ranked number 45, 41, 66, and 49. So that's the talent in the Cincinnati roster, minus transfers. 45, 41, 66, and 49 competing against Alabama and Georgia classes in the top 2 or 3 in the country all the way through. Michigan classes more in the 8 to 12 range. Just a thought there. Get business credit, folks. If you have started a business, think about starting a business, don't know where to start, don't know where to lean on for financing, join our guy, Josh Van Horn, over on Get Business Credit right here on YouTube. And he will point you in the right direction with instruction and tools to access thousands of credit lines for business. All right. Next up here, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hello.
Yes.
Is this Mark?
It sure
Hey,
is.
Mark. This is TJ. All right. Well, first thing I'll say is in regards to your last caller, he was asking how far Alabama might have to travel, in the playoff games or whatever. Well,
yep.
I'd say it's right about 900 miles to Indy if he wants to win the national championship. That's all I'll say about that. But my question to you is, why does Georgia belong in the playoffs and not Notre Dame?
Georgia has played a better schedule and been more dominant against that schedule. They play in a conference.
I'll have to stop you. That's SEC bias. That's SEC
No,
bias.
it's not
I'm
SEC
sorry.
bias. It's plain
they're not a
metrics.
champ.
You're telling me that
They're
Notre
not a
Dame
champ.
has been more dominant than Georgia.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. If we're going to play bias, we might as well bring the BCS back.
I'm not talking about bias. I'm talking about what's happened on the field, the performance on the field. I'm not talking about bias. I'm talking about evaluate Georgia's.
That's bias.
No, it's not bias.
Yeah, it is.
Georgia has the #1 defense in the country against its schedule. That's not bias. Okay, now it's number 2.
They might still have
I think they still have the #1 defense because before tonight they could have given
17 points.
I understand Notre Dame got blown out by 11 points at home against a team that's not nearly as good as Alabama.
But
there you go.
Playoffs. They're going to be in the playoffs.
Who's going to be in the
playoffs? They're going to be in
playoff?
the playoffs at number 3. Well, Cincinnati, the team that beat them.
Absolutely.
The team that beat them. Actually,
and the team that beat Georgia is going to be in the playoff too.
Well, that's biased.
Okay.
That's biased that there's 2 SEC teams.
I'm not being biased. I could care less about Georgia
No,
football.
I'm not saying you are. I'm not saying you are. I'm
present
saying
your
that
case.
if the committee.
So let's before you do, let me make sure I'm hearing you clearly. You believe that Notre Dame should be in the playoff and not Georgia.
Yes, I do at number 4. Yes,
all right,
I do.
present your case.
My case is that they're a one-loss team too. They're a one-loss team. Yes, they didn't have a championship game. They didn't have a championship game. Okay. But
And
they
whose
still have
fault
one
is that?
It's theirs. It is theirs for not joining the ACC. But that's besides the point. That's besides the point.
It's really not beside
Alabama
the point.
clearly.
Georgia subjected itself to an extra
I don't look
game.
at 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't look at 1, 2, and 3, and 4 in the playoffs. I look at who deserves to be there. I look at who deserves to be there, not any bias.
You don't have any
believe
bias.
That Alabama.
Who do you root for?
I believe that Alabama, Michigan,
Okay, you're a Michigan
Cincinnati,
fan.
and Notre Dame believe to be there. I believe they deserve to be there because Alabama clearly decimated them by 17 points in the championship game. They had their shot, Georgia. They've had their shot 7 times, and they continually lose to Alabama.
What does
They
that
don't
have to
deserve
do
an
with
8 shot.
2021? We could say
Because
Notre.
Oklahoma was getting the same treatment.
We could.
Oklahoma was getting the same-
Okay, you're
They were getting the same
you're digging a
treatment.
hole and just giving me more and more ammunition. Once I cut loose, you better look out
Well-
because you're just digging a hole to give me more ammunition. You're talking about Notre Dame and you're talking about the past. Are you seriously
Well,
going to
yes.
make that fight between Georgia and Notre Dame in the playoffs? Really?
I actually will.
And we're
Because they deserve to be
and
there
are we
over
going to
Georgia.
bring up the 2 games that those 2 teams
Those
played in the
students
last
that
4
fought
years?
hard
Are we
all
going to bring
year
up that Georgia
deserve
and
to
Notre
sit.
Dame have played twice in the last 4 years? And what happened in those games? If you want to bring up the past
That was-
performance, bring up past
whatever.
performance. Georgia versus Notre Dame. What's happened there?
They've gotten beat usually.
Usually, no, it's what has happened when Georgia and Notre Dame have played since 2017. They've played twice.
Exactly, and that's what
What
I'm saying.
happened the 2 times Georgia and
I'm
Notre
saying
Dame
that Oklahoma
played
has
since
also been
2017?
put into the
We're not
playoffs
talking about
biasly.
Oklahoma.
When-
Let's talk
when
about
Big 12
Georgia
doesn't even
and
fucking
Notre
play
Dame.
defense. I'm sorry.
You're bringing up the past in trying to validate Notre Dame, and I'm playing right into your hands.
No,
I will play that.
validating Notre
I will.
Dame. I'm
I will
saying
play
the
that
players-
game. I can
the
play either
players
game you
deserve to
want.
be there.
We can either debate 2021 solely, or we can
I'm
talk
an
about the
avid Notre
past.
Dame hater, dude. I can't stand Notre Dame.
Okay, let me
I hate
define.
that team,
Let me define something for you.
but I still I still believe they deserve to be in the playoffs.
I am giving you a choice. Do you want to?
Especially over a Georgia, they got beat 17 points in their championship game and ain't even a champion. So they're on the
And,
same.
and Notre
on the
Dame's
same playing
Notre
field
Dame's
as
a,
Notre Dame
you
right
are
now
doing
this year.
nothing but giving me more ammunition. Notre Dame's a champion of what? What are they a champion of?
Well, they're not a champion because
Exactly,
they don't have a
just
game,
like
but
Georgia, they are not a
has that stopped
champion.
the committee?
Georgia's not
Has
a
that
champion,
stopped
but Notre
the committee
Dame's
in the
not a
past?
champion.
Has that stopped the committee from putting in a non-champion
Then why
over
put
an
Notre
actual
Dame
champion
in?
of the same committee?
You're excluding Georgia because they didn't win a
deserve to be there over
championship. You are excluding
Because
Georgia
they don't
because they
deserve
didn't
to be
win a
there.
championship. But give me Notre
they deserve
Dame's
to be there.
championship. Where is it?
The only team they lost to is an undefeated Cincinnati that's going, okay, if Notre Dame don't deserve to be there, then Cincinnati don't deserve to be there.
What?
And the top four should be
Cincinnati
Alabama,
beat
Georgia,
them.
Michigan, Ohio State. Then Notre Dame deserves to be there because
You're
Cincinnati's the
making
only team
less
that beat them.
sense the more you talk. The more you talk, the less sense you're making. Let's start here because you've gone all over the place.
It was an 11-point loss to
You've
Cincinnati.
gone all over the place.
Week 5.
At
week
home.
5, week 5.
At home.
At home. Okay. But yet but Notre Dame's beaten a Wisconsin by 28 points. They've beaten a Purdue by 14 points. They've beaten an FSU by 3.
Whoa. We're going to Florida State? We're building Notre Dame's resume on a 5-7 Florida State team that they barely beat in overtime. That they barely beat.
Clemson 10-3. A Clemson that's got like 5 losses.
Clemson doesn't at least understand what you're talking about. You at this point, again, you don't know what you're talking about. Clemson has not lost 5 games. They're not even close to a 5-loss team.
Well, no.
What
I'm
are
just
you
saying,
talking about?
5 games because
they're not a 5-loss team. Why are you just making things up that are non-factual?
It doesn't matter.
No, yes, it does matter.
It doesn't matter.
Don't say teams have 5 losses when they don't have 5 losses because it doesn't matter. Then don't even bring them up.
Well, obviously the games don't matter. The games don't matter because
the games do matter. A freaking team went 12-1 against a better schedule than the team that you want in. You understand that every point that you've made, I have shot to hell and completely overridden every point that you've made. You first state Georgia hasn't won a championship, but Notre Dame should be in. Where's their championship? You make no sense. And then you say Georgia lost a game.
They've never
They
had
lost
a
to
championship.
Alabama. Where's Notre
Georgia
Dame's
lost to
championship?
Alabama. Yeah.
And Notre
In
Dame
the
lost to
championship.
Cincinnati. Notre Dame lost to a team that's not as good as Alabama.
By that standard, Baylor should be 4 then, right? They're a champion.
Fine. If you came with that argument, we could have that discussion too.
We can't because they have 2 losses. We can't.
Oh, they
We
have 2 losses.
We definitely can't.
We are going strictly by record.
We definitely. We have to because that's what.
If we're going strictly by record, 12-1 is better than 11-1. So again, you give me another piece of ammunition. You can go in any direction, and I can out-argue you on any point. Because I've done it. You've brought up like 17 points, and everyone favors Georgia. Better record. You want the better record? Georgia's 12-1. Notre Dame's 11-1. Bye. You didn't play in a conference championship game because you don't join a conference. Bye.
But that's not fair in a playoff era.
It
That's
is
not
fair. Join a
fair.
freaking
That's not fair.
conference. You had the opportunity to join a conference. ACC would beg and plead, and I'm sure they have, for you to join a conference. Notre Dame didn't want to join a conference.
Yeah, but why
then you have
would
to pay the
Why would they? They have no
consequences.
reason.
Why would they? Because of scenarios like this.
When you get national coverage with every game you play and make so much money.
Everybody gets national coverage with every game.
Not everybody.
Yes, they
Not
do.
everybody.
Ohio State plays every game on national television.
It depends on the area you're from.
No, they
whether it's
play every
or not.
game on national television.
in certain areas.
No.
Whatever. I still believe that it should be Alabama.
Okay, you've given me no reason. If you would have come with some decent argument, but you did not. I was here to have a good debate on it, but you didn't bring anything reasonable.
The reasonable thing should be biased. Like, there shouldn't be two SEC teams. There shouldn't be two of any conference in the playoffs, plain and simple. There really shouldn't
Okay.
be. If you're going to keep Notre Dame out,
This is your next point.
out.
Okay, your next point
you
is
might as well just
your
put,
next
you might as well
point.
just put Alabama, Georgia,
Stop
Michigan,
talking
Ohio
and
State
let me
in
respond
it.
to what you just said. Your next point is that there should not be two teams from any one conference. So what conference is Notre Dame representing?
The Independent. That's conference.
No, it's not a conference.
They're
Being
independent,
an independent,
but they're still independent.
What can
They're
you
not in a
please
conference.
make
They're
some
not in a
sense?
conference.
Say something that
They're
makes
not in a
some
conference,
sense.
so to speak.
No, being an independent is not being. There's not an independence conference. They don't play each other. That's not a
I
conference.
get that, but it's still, they deserve to be there. Plain
Okay.
and simple.
I'm going to give you one
because
more
hey,
opportunity
it's
to say something that makes sense that will defend your selection of Notre Dame to the playoff. Go.
To defend my selection of the playoff.
Yes, you're like 0 for 40 right now.
0 for 40. I'll shoot for 0 for 50 then.
All right. Well, have a good night. I appreciate the call. Oh, my word. All right. If nothing else, maybe that was entertaining. Maybe. And I truly, in a sense, feel bad for shooting him down that much. But my goodness, say something that makes sense. Don't tell me that Notre Dame should be in because Georgia didn't win a championship. Take Baylor. If you want to argue Baylor and say Georgia didn't win a championship and Baylor did, I'll say, okay, check for Baylor. Got it. But don't bring up Notre Dame and make your number one point because Georgia didn't win a conference championship. Oh, maybe he should have given me Notre Dame and I could have given him a better argument of why Notre Dame should be in the playoff. He should have said, Mark, you know what? I'm giving you Notre Dame. Argue for me why they should be in the playoff. And I could have come up with some semblance of an argument for him. All right. I believe there are some super chats that I don't want to miss here. We've got Spaghetti Factory. Quality loss for the Hawks. Put them in the Rose Bowl. Oh, boy. Yeah, I feel bad for Iowa fans. I'm sorry that you had to witness that tonight. It was ugly. Ugly, ugly, ugly. Unforgiven. Too many words for me to read there. Hey, Mark, do you do a postseason thoughts on the season? If not, what were some of your favorite moments from the regular season and championship games, and how does this season stack up to previous years? Wow. I typically try to be a pretty thoughtful person, so that's a lot to hit me with in regards to comparing this season with previous years. Well, it was certainly anticlimactic for all the chaos and unpredictability of the season and the potential chaos. It obviously didn't come to fruition. I enjoyed the season. I thought it was great. I did ask for something different than Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, 4 of those 5 teams making it, but we got 2 of the 5. And in terms of my favorite moments this season, my favorite moments this season. Man, you have caught me off guard. I am going all over the place for trying to figure out favorite moments. I just enjoy the games and I enjoy good football and exciting football with not necessarily even good teams playing. I'll take anybody playing, and I enjoy every football Saturday. I can't point to any particular moments that excited or thrilled me in any such way. Yeah. I'll tell you the most disappointing moment was last Saturday, about 3:30 in the afternoon. That would be the most disappointing moment in terms of a favorite moment or moments from today's play. I thoroughly enjoyed the Oklahoma State Baylor game. For as mistake filled and turnover filled as that game was, that was the best. That was the best competition of the day in terms of drama and intrigue and strategy at the end of the game, because Dave Aranda had two choices to make, two options, two paths to go down in regards to which way to play the strategy at the end of that game. And I thought he might get burned, and he almost did, but he did not. He went the right direction. He put the faith on his defense, and they pulled through for him. So thank you so much for that, Spaghetti Factory. And I was curious to see any comments that were coming in during our last caller, just because I wanted to see if anybody possibly had a point for Notre Dame. Trill City, thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. Mark Ryder's cooking this caller. And I don't like to do that. I don't normally do it, but man, I guess he just struck me the wrong way when he came in with this. Notre Dame should be in the playoff and Georgia shouldn't. Okay, let's start talking about it. And then when I say, well, give me their resume, give me some bullet points. Well, SEC bias. Well, that's not a point. That is not a, if Georgia was 9-3 and they were being put in the playoff, I'd say absolutely, there's an SEC bias here. And I'm not saying that there's not an SEC bias, but Georgia's been the most dominant football team in the country. So the first thing he says is, no, they're not. No, they haven't been. Are you serious? Are you trying to compare Notre Dame's performance this year against Georgia's? Seriously. And then he starts bringing up the past. And I'm like, if you're going to bring up, seriously, you're bringing up Georgia's past, their past 4 or 5 years against Notre Dame's past 4 or 5. Seriously, Notre Dame's been manhandled in 2 playoff games, and Georgia beat Oklahoma and went to overtime against the best team in the country and may have themselves been the best team in the country in 2017. And that's their playoff performance. And we're really going to compare Georgia's playoff performance in those 2 games against Oklahoma and Alabama with Notre Dame playing Clemson in Alabama? Really? We can go either 2021 or we can go to the past. And I even let him decide which one, which he never did, to say, I think we should just be talking about 2021 because the past is the past. It should not impact the selection of these playoff teams this year. But if you want to talk about the past, Georgia and Notre Dame played twice in the last 4 years. Didn't work out too well for Notre Dame. So you're continuing just to give me more ammunition to shoot down your ridiculous notion that Notre Dame's had a better season than Georgia. It's not even close. It's not even comparable. Oh, my goodness. I greatly enjoy the debate when the debate is reasonable and when the debate is, nobody wants to duke it out with somebody who's incapable. You know, if somebody was going to call in and say Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time, and somebody else was going to say Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback of all time, and okay, we can have a debate about it. But if somebody calls in and says Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time, and somebody else calls in and says, Drew Lock is the greatest quarterback of all time. Well, where do we even start having that conversation? We can't. We shouldn't. Okay. Justin, yes, the entire SEC plays every game on national television, including Vanderbilt. If I wanted to get nitpicky with that guy, I would have said, you know what? Notre Dame excluded what? Was it 1? It was at least 1, maybe 2 of their games they took off of NBC and put on the internet. So unless you paid for those games, those weren't played on national TV. Justin, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. And I will continue to look for some other ones if they came in. Let's go to our next caller here at the Voice of College Football, and I'll give my voice a rest. Welcome. Who's on the line?
Hello, it's me, Roberto.
Roberto, how you doing?
Are you feeling all right from
I typically have low blood pressure, not like low unhealthy, like low healthy blood pressure. So it's good for me to get my juices flowing once in a while.
what idea is Notre Dame going to get a shot playoff? Like, they got stoned 17-0 at one versus Cincinnati at half. And I'm pretty sure Cincinnati could have put up points if they had a better field goal kicker because they missed 2 field goals that game.
True.
Like, that game was already out of reach before the second half even started. And second of all, look at the near choke jobs they had since the start versus Florida State versus Toledo, where people think that Toledo honestly should have won had they probably clock managed that game better.
How good is Virginia Tech? What's Virginia Tech, like the 60th best team in the country, and Notre Dame beat them on a last-second field goal?
I don't even know how they got the opportunity. But I think they were trailing too. I don't remember that game, but it was on my screen, and like somehow they came back and got them game-winning field goal. And they have I don't know what's going on with their quarterback room. Did they figure that out late? Because it's been overall been a lot of switching and things. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. This was not what I wanted to talk about before I was next in line, okay? I originally wanted to talk about, like, the Oklahoma State Baylor game because it was looking completely, one-sided with Baylor. I don't know. It was looking ugly, mostly for Oklahoma State because, the turnovers from Spencer Rattler, 4 INTs that game. And then, like, you saw my comment on that, the Oklahoma State Baylor post-game video about the choke job in the red zone. Like, they got into the 1 yard, like I think like half-yard line or 1 yard line. They have never run a single quarterback sneak at all in that 1 yard line. Even Iowa knows what to call on 1 yard line, quarterback sneak or fullback dive, and they didn't. And Oklahoma State didn't even bother doing that at all. I mean, the last red zone trip, which, they stopped by diving tackle just short, but the first one was unforgivable. So I think on third down, they try to just run out of the shotgun, and Spencer Rattler almost fumbled the ball away. And it almost reminded me of the Ohio State-Nebraska game, where, like, for some reason we were trying to pass the ball and C.J. Stroud sacked, fumbled, and it could have ended in a disaster. Like, that type of play calling just riles me up. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was a good ball game. And like I said before I took your call, Dave Aranda had 2 options to make near the end of the game. And it was not a easy choice because Oklahoma State could have burned the rest of the time and scored the game-winning touchdown. And he would have been having to answer questions about why didn't you just let them score so you could have gotten the ball back, because all you would have needed was a field goal to win the game. But he put it on his defense, and they came through for him.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what's going on with Baylor's offense. Because at one point they had 17 straight completions passing the ball, and then they just were throwing like fades in the red zone, I think, and then that ended into a blocked field goal at the end of the half. And then I don't know, the play calling just went conservative, or either Oklahoma State's defense stepped up, but like it was going from a thumping, a blowout type of momentum to somehow a near choke job, but thankfully they got the stop they need in the red zone to get that win in the Big 12 championship. What are your thoughts on I don't know, Iowa's poor offense?
All right.
I mean, because I just feel bad for Corey and his team. Just like I've been having a lot of phone calls with him, and like I was not happy about the offense I'm seeing from Iowa, because they just, I don't know what's going on. The quarterback play isn't that great, and the play calling is just I don't know. It's just terrible. Because I don't know what happened in the Purdue game where they let David Bell single-handedly just outperform their entire offense, and then the Wisconsin game they just got shut down. Do you think there needs to be changes on Iowa's offense?
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk Ferentz has been there for a while now, but this, obviously, there needs to be some changes going on especially in the offensive side on the field. And is Kirk Ferentz going to have the ball to remove his son off the offensive play calling duties as the offensive coordinator? That's going to be the question for the offseason.
Well,
or do they just need to get?
You know who to call. You can call our Iowa guy, Corey. He could talk about that all night. I just know that they need to fix their offense. But I think some of that has to do with recruiting. I don't know that Iowa's capable. They are capable of having a better offense, even with the level of talent that they recruit. There's no question about that. There are similar teams with similar levels of talent. Take Nebraska, that have better offensive football teams than Iowa. So they could certainly do better, yes. I think some things were working against them. They had offensive line issues. That was first and foremost. And need to recruit a better quarterback. All of that.
Yeah, the first and second string quarterbacks were not impressive at all. All right, well, that's it for me.
Well, I appreciate the call, Roberto. You have a good night.
All right, you too. Hope you're feeling better after that previous call.
No, I'm feeling fine. All right, let's get to our next caller here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Jonathan down in Houston. How are you, man?
I am doing well. What's going on?
Good, man. Hey, just having a victory cigar here, enjoying the Big Ten championship from Michigan. Try to be a voice of reason here. Try to be a sober Michigan fan for you. So here's the thing, man. I didn't get to call you last week, but I got a ton of respect for the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. I like to say it this way. Some people ask me a lot as a Michigan fan, do you hate Michigan State more or Ohio State more? And I would say the hatred is equal. But the difference is, as a Michigan fan, I respect Ohio State. I don't have any respect for Sparty. And Ohio State is one of those rivalries that Michigan just has learned to respect. Michigan's been humbled over the last decade from Ohio State. And it was just a heck of a victory, man, to go in there in that game in the big house and get that done. And I'm really happy for Harbaugh. He's been mocked and ridiculed by the national media for years, and it's just really neat to see a full team effort. The team come together and play like a team, and I think they are in the top four. An argument to be made the most balanced team out of the Final Four that are left. But I want to make a point, is that if we're strictly just looking at the four best teams in college football right now, I mean, if that's your metric,
yep.
What are the four best teams? I would argue that the four best teams are Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State. And I would love to see that playoff. And I know it's not going to happen, but can you imagine if we had two Big Ten teams and two SEC teams playing for all of it? that would be a heck of a college football playoff. And I think, man, if you lined up, let's say you ranked them this way: Alabama won because they won that game. Michigan 2, Georgia 3, and Ohio State 4. You'd have Alabama and Ohio State playing each other. That would be just an epic game this year. I know last year they played. I know it was a little bit lopsided, but I think it's a different Ohio State team. I think they'd give Alabama a really, really good run in that game. And Georgia and Michigan, we already know that's going to be a good game. One thing I'm sure of, Michigan is not going to do what Michigan State did a few years ago when they got into the playoffs and they got embarrassed by Alabama. If Michigan plays Georgia, it's going to be a competitive game. It's going to be a good game. I'm not saying that Michigan will win that game, but I do think one thing that I'm pretty sure of, Michigan will not embarrass themselves. They will put up a very respectable game against Georgia. And I think if Alabama and Ohio State played, that's a pick'em game for me. I'm not sure who would win that game. But to me, those are the 4 best teams right now in college football. I don't care that Baylor won their championship. Good for Baylor. Glad for them. You got to tip your hat to them. I don't think Cincinnati belongs in there. I think if you're strictly looking at the 4 best teams, that's it: Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State. So I'm going to get off here, man. I just wanted to say, as a Michigan fan, I respect you guys at Ohio State. I'm super glad that the rivalry took on a new gear this year. I think it's great for college football. I know it was a hard loss for you guys to swallow last week, but man, I hope that there's a small place in the Ohio State heart that can at least appreciate the fact that, hey, that rivalry's got a little juice to it again. And I'm like I said, I respect you guys. It was a heck of a victory for Michigan, but good luck to you guys as you play Utah in the Rose Bowl. I fully expect Ohio State will play that game, and I think that'll be a really, really good game. So go Blue. Appreciate you, Mark. You're a great guy. Thanks for the show.
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate that so much. Much like our last caller here, I've said that probably 50 times in the last week, not going to any kind of resume comparison or anything like that. Just if somebody simply said, who are you going to put in as the 4 best teams in the country? And you don't have to try to explain it. You're just going based on what you have witnessed and who you believe are the 4 best teams in the country. I have spit out the same answer. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Who am I talking to?
This is Chris from East Texas.
Hey, Chris.
Chris from East Texas. Yeah, I haven't called in a while just because my Longhorns have sucked it up pretty good in the past month and a half or so. I haven't really had a reason to call in and brag about my team, but I want to give a strong argument for Baylor. I'm not a Baylor fan at all, but I want to hear your stance on, do you think Baylor has an argument to get into the playoff?
Yes. And
do you think they should get in over Georgia?
It depends what the criteria is. Are they a better team than Georgia? No. But that doesn't necessarily always mean.
But that we know with this committee that doesn't mean anything. It's all about resume.
Yeah. So let's take
it, by quality of wins, and obviously Baylor has the 1 loss to TCU, which is the big bold letter oopsie in the whole thing. Obviously, who is Georgia beat at the end of the season? We look at the rankings. Who is Georgia beat?
Okay. Who is Georgia beat? Arkansas, Clemson.
If we go down the line,
okay.
Clemson, Arkansas, Kentucky. That's their best wins.
Okay. Auburn.
Yeah,
Tennessee.
Auburn. Well, I mean, no, we're not including Auburn.
Well, hang on just a second. I don't know that Baylor, if Baylor and Auburn played tomorrow, I certainly wouldn't mortgage my house on Baylor beating Auburn. So I don't know that they would.
which one-footed quarterback's playing better that game, I guess, is what you really got to go on with Baylor and Auburn. But, I mean, if we're going on
I'll take Georgia. You take Baylor. What are Baylor's best wins in order?
Oklahoma State, top 5 team today.
Well, yeah, if you think they're a top 5 team. They're really not, but yeah, they're a top 10 or 15 team.
They were ranked by the college, but we're going by the college football playoff committee ranking.
I'm not going by their rankings, that's for sure. I know
I'm going by what
I know. I don't rely on 13 people telling me how good football teams are. Anyway, Oklahoma State's
I'm going off how they think.
Oklahoma State's not one of the top. They're not one of the 5 best teams in the country.
If you ask me personally, if Georgia and Baylor played 100 times, I would take Georgia 99 out of 100.
Wait a minute. So you're arguing for Baylor against Georgia? Okay, let's start over. Hang on just a second, please. Let me just start this over because I want this to be an orderly analysis here. So you want to argue Baylor against Georgia, but you're going to state right out that Georgia's a better team, but we're not going by better team. You just want to see who has a better resume, right?
That's how the college football committee does their rankings, correct?
Supposedly. Yes, they do. Okay.
So
let's start from the top with Baylor. Okay. Oklahoma State. Okay.
Top 5 win.
Who's next?
Oklahoma. Top 10 win at the time.
At the time. Yeah. That's not what they go by, though.
Yes.
But
BYU.
Go ahead. BYU. Okay.
BYU. They're number 12 currently.
Okay.
Iowa State, I believe, was ranked also when Baylor played them.
Well, the committee doesn't go by what they were ranked way back when. They're going to go by what their resume is right this second.
Okay. We'll go by. Do you want to go by what they're ranked currently?
Absolutely. That's what the committee's going to do, and that's what I would do as well.
Okay.
I don't care that Indiana was number 17 in week 1.
We got 1, 2. All of Baylor's top 3 wins are well above Georgia's top 3 wins.
Okay. No. Let's go back with
Oklahoma
our exercise.
Oklahoma State 5.
Give me
BYU's
the wins.
12.
Okay.
Oklahoma's 14 currently. And Baylor also redeemed themselves of that Oklahoma State loss earlier in the year.
True.
So I mean that's kind of like just like a minus out. So I mean really that TCU loss is just the big oopsie daisy for Baylor this year.
Yeah, we don't deal with oopsie daisies. That's Ohio State learned that in 2018. They had a much better resume than Baylor has right now, but they lost to Purdue. So out. So anyway,
I mean Georgia's resume. I mean their best wins are
whoa. Hang on. You're going all over the place. Back to Baylor, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, BYU. What's their 4th best win? Iowa State.
Probably a lot better than Georgia's.
No, that's not what I'm asking you. What is their 4th best win?
I don't know. Let me go to their schedule real quick. Hold on.
It's probably Iowa State. I can't think of anybody else that they beat that's any good. Texas Tech. It's Iowa State. Okay. Do they have any other? Do they have any other wins? Do they have any other wins that you consider quality wins?
The non-conference is weak. I mean, who's arguing with Georgia? I mean,
okay, that's pretty much it.
Playing FCS game before they're.
All right. There's really they beat Kansas State. Kansas State was what, 7-5?
Kansas State ain't no knockoff, but they lost to my Longhorns. So I mean, I can't argue much for
okay. So there's the top 5 wins for Baylor. Georgia's best win would be Clemson went 9-3. Then you got Arkansas. They went 8-4. And then they've got a glut of they've got 9-3 Kentucky. And they've got an 8-4 Arkansas team. And I believe all those teams they're all ranked somewhere in the 15 to 20 range. Okay.
I mean, they trounced Charleston Southern.
No, we're not talking about those games. We're not talking about Baylor. Baylor beat Texas State by 9 points. Once we get past these wins and losses and talk about performance, then we're really off the rails because Georgia's actually played well and Baylor's scuffled by a lot of bad teams. So Clemson, Arkansas, and Kentucky are all comparable to Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and BYU. So your quality wins, Georgia certainly played a deeper schedule because then you got to tack on Tennessee, Auburn, and a bunch of other bowl eligible teams, Florida, Missouri, South Carolina. They played a lot more. They played a much deeper schedule. That's not debatable. I just listed 3, 6, 8 teams that are bowl eligible. So you could maybe argue Baylor's top heavy a little, but I think I'll say that the top 3 wins for each team are very comparable. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and BYU versus Clemson, Arkansas, and Kentucky. It's pretty comparable. Like that's not a slam dunk for either one of them, but Georgia's played a much deeper schedule. Okay. Now losses. Who did Baylor lose to? Oh, yeah, TCU and Oklahoma State, and Georgia lost to Alabama.
Bad one.
Okay, that's the end of the conversation right there, because the wins are on Georgia's side, but it's comparable. It's comparable. It's a debate, but the losses aren't even close. So that's the Georgia and then if you look at the performance of the two teams, Georgia obliterated just about everybody on that list except for Clemson. While Baylor didn't dominate any of those teams that they beat. And here's your entire argument. Baylor won a conference and Georgia did not. Now, if you want to go with that, that's fine, if that's what you want the criteria to be. But if you're looking at a resume, Georgia's got a better resume than Baylor. But Baylor won a conference. And anybody that wants to argue that, I'm okay with that if they want to say you got to win a conference. Then we need to really change the playoff format, which, of course, we all know that we need to do that anyway.
I'll tell you that Baylor has a stronger argument than a lot of the Notre Dame pushers that have been calling in
maybe
earlier. If I have to, I mean,
Notre Dame beat Wisconsin. They beat Purdue. Who else did they beat after that? Who were their best wins? Yeah, it's pretty thin. Coach. Well, are we?
I mean, I think we're all pretty certain that Alabama's going to be one. Michigan, if you want my honest opinion, I think Michigan should be number one, honestly, after their performance today.
Okay.
I mean,
I have no problem
give
with
it to
that.
Michigan. I mean, the way they played today, everybody, after Alabama beat Georgia, I don't think anybody watched Michigan after that Alabama game. Dude, Michigan was on it. I mean, 42-3 against Iowa. That was at one point, ranked 3?
Yeah, Iowa's a good team.
At one point this year?
Iowa's a good team. They're one of the 20
defensive teams.
They're one of the defensive teams. They're one of the 20 fundamental. They're one of the 20 best teams in the country. But that's not like playing Georgia.
Every year.
But that's not like playing Georgia. They didn't play Georgia.
Okay.
There's no comparison
I want to
between
get your
those two
opinion
teams.
on this because I watched your video with Uncle Lou the other day.
Yeah.
And I've been watching Uncle Lou all year, and I know he has been a JT Daniels, pro JT Daniels guy. I think Georgia should have went with JT Daniels after halftime. Even though Georgia
I think
was
that's
winning.
a good point. I think that's a good point. And I don't even think that that's all on Stetson Bennett, because I think a lot of the things that went on out there were not his fault. But sometimes you just need to make a change, and you need new blood, and a reset and need to go with somebody else. I agree with that.
Do you think that's the stubbornness of Kirby Smart, that he just thinks that like every move I make is the correct move? It's like, I mean, I've been rolling with this guy since week whatever, what was it, like 6 or 7, and we've been playing, Little Sisters of the Poor almost all year. And
well, not based on what we just talked about. They've played a better schedule than Baylor. But anyway, we're not going to go back into that. I think I don't know Kirby Smart's motivation. It could be, yes, it could be that I want to show that I'm right, and I picked Stetson Bennett to be the starter, so I'm right. I picked Jake Fromm over Justin Fields. I believed I was right, and I wanted to prove that. That could be it, or it could be, I hope that this would show him to be a nice person, but not necessarily an effective football coach if he was doing it out of loyalty for Stetson Bennett and thinking, I don't want to do this to the young man because he doesn't deserve it. I don't think Stetson Bennett, I don't think he played a great game, but I don't think he made a bunch of he made one really bad decision that helped Alabama pull away with that pick 6. But the other interception wasn't his fault necessarily. And he didn't have a running game.
They were just quit on the.
He didn't necessarily have the running game that he's accustomed to. So I don't think he played a horrible game. He didn't play a great game. But I do believe that you're right. I would have done the same thing. I think that's a great point. That shoot, all Kirby Smart had to do is look at his mentor across the field and think. He did it once with Tua over Jalen Hurts in a national championship game where we were standing on the same places on the same stadium. And then he did it the next year against us. But that was due to an injury. But still, Jalen Hurts came in for Tua the next year in the SEC championship game. And it worked out for him. Why don't I try that?
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking that for the whole game. And
you gave me an idea for a video.
I mean, even though Georgia was winning, I still didn't think Stetson Bennett looked that good. But I mean, it's just Nick Saban. He spanks Kirby Smart every time they play. It's just Kirby Smart's kryptonite, I guess. Do you think he's going to make a QB switch for the playoffs? Because, I mean, Georgia's going to make it in the playoffs. I mean, they're going to get 3 or 4. I think Cincinnati should get 3, honestly. And Georgia should go down to 4 after the butt whooping they suffered today. But do you think he'll put Daniels in for the playoffs? I mean, that's risky considering Daniels, I don't know, has it attempted a pass in what, like 3 or 4 weeks?
Yeah, I don't think he will
today. Man, that's I don't trust Stetson Bennett. That's Kirby Smart's decision, though. But all right, Mark.
Well, thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Here we go. Next up on the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's me, Alex from Boone, North Carolina here.
Alex, how's it going?
Going good. First time calling in, but a big time fan of the show and yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
A few questions. Rob, you might have answered this. I joined in a little late. If you were the 14th member of the committee, what is your top 4? And was this just a Bryce Young Heisman moment, or was Georgia been overrated this entire season? Considering Bama's performance against LSU and Auburn, which was honestly terrible.
A lot of good questions there. So question number 1 would be, who would I select for the playoff? I would select the 4 teams that they are going to select. And I hate the playoff format. You've been listening to me for quite some time, it sounds like, and you know that I hate the playoffs, and it's not even a playoff. So if I could ever discipline myself long enough to be consistent in calling it an invitational, that's what I would do, because it's not a playoff. A playoff is objective. It's an objective system to select the teams. So people are selecting. So it's an invitational. You have to be invited to the playoff. So under these circumstances, I would invite the same 4 teams that the playoff committee is going to invite, because I think that they are the 4 teams that best earned over the course of the season those 4 spots, and that would be Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and Cincinnati. And I would order them Alabama 1, Michigan 2, Georgia 3, Cincinnati 4. And I hate the Cincinnati situation because I believe that they earned it in their own way, but their schedule in no way is comparable to dozens and dozens and dozens of teams across the nation, nor did they even dominate that schedule. So who were the 4 best teams in the country? The 4 best teams in the country are Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree on that as well. Yeah, I don't even think Cincinnati's a top 10 team, to be honest. They've struggled with like Tulane and other teams. They barely got by.
I'd be right there with you.
But
Bryce Young, I would, it's difficult for me to really, the Heisman Trophy is supposed to be awarded to the best player in the country. We know that's not the case. So we know that it's not given to the best player in the country. It's given to the best quarterback in the country, and sometimes a running back or a receiver. So he's going to win it, and he deserves to win it. I do think that Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Jordan Davis, who else am I thinking of? Will Anderson, Alabama. He's got over 30 tackles for loss. Those guys are better players at their positions, but they're not going to get the Heisman Trophy. And he's going to win it, and he deserves it. Based on the way we look at the Heisman Trophy is going to a skill position player and probably a quarterback. I was wrestling between he and CJ Stroud a few weeks ago, but it's clearly, for me, Bryce Young now.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thanks, Mark. You have a good night.
Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much for that.
No problem. Appreciate having me on. Bye.
All right. Thank you so much for the super chat coming in from RF. RF has been here for quite some time. So congratulations to you and Michigan Nation. Very happy Michigan won. Go Blue. All right. Next up here, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's Talk is Pitt here.
Talk is Pitt. How you doing? Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I've been a little bit busy since the end of the game up until now, and I'm just, able to hop on your live stream and catch everything. But man, what a game it was for the first quarter and a half. It went back and forth. I mean, there's probably 5 touchdowns scored within 12 or 13 minutes of the game. And then after that, Wake Forest just stalled. It's like literally they just quit. And, I mean, I'm happy. I mean, I don't care. The rest of the college football world is doing horrible right now this year. Everybody sucks, and only really one team is really good. I don't care. Pitt deserves it. They wanted it, and they got it.
Absolutely. And this is what's great about college football. And unfortunately, we've been distracted and derailed by the playoff. And I try to do as much as I possibly can to give love to the other conference championship games. But of course, we get totally hyper focused on this playoff. And I previewed the Pitt Wake Forest game. And I did not have enough attention to truly watch it. I had it on a second screen. but I DVR'd it so I could watch it later. Now, will I? Probably not, because I just have too many things to do, but I would like to. It was 21-all at half and looked like a much better game than the one I was watching that obviously had playoff implications. But from the time that Clemson showed that they weren't most likely going to win the ACC, I was looking forward to this matchup, and it obviously turned out to be a really good game for about close to 3 quarters. That Wake Forest and Pitt would give us a lot of entertaining plays and 2 excellent quarterbacks, and I expected Pitt to win. I picked them to cover the spread, but not necessarily that decidedly.
Yeah, I honestly wish I would have bet on the game, because my prediction for this game was the score it came out to, 45-21. Now, I knew what would happen early on would happen, just trading punches back and forth. But just Wake Forest just doesn't have the defense to be consistent. Now, I'm not saying our defense was any spectacular thing to look at, because there is a lot of stuff in that game that I didn't like. We kept getting injuries all over the place. People were missing tackles, but thank God, though, we finally started putting the brakes on Sam Hartman. I mean, we picked them off 3 times in a row. One of it got returned for a pick 6.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was
I saw
beautiful.
the interceptions.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was beautiful, and even if it's just for 1 year, and I really hate saying this because we lose a lot at the end of the season, not just on offense but on defense. Even if it's just for 1 year, I would just like to say that Pitt has done something West Virginia has yet to do, and that's win a conference title since moving to a new conference.
That is for sure.
But thanks for having me on, Mark. Go Pitt, and I guess I'll see you around the time of the Peach Bowl, which I'm assuming that's probably where Pitt will go to.
Well, again, congratulations. That's awesome that you won the ACC, and a tremendous year from Pitt at 11-2.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
Pitt actually made me some money, as well as Georgia Tech. Our guy, Jason Parker, on our Florida State show, for some reason, didn't think Pitt was going to have a very good year, and he gave me 5.5 or over on the win total. So I grabbed that as fast as I possibly could. And then he also gave me Georgia Tech and below, something like 5.5. And I said, absolutely. Georgia Tech sucks. Pitt does not suck. I picked Pitt to go not 11-2, 8-4, if I remember correctly. And that was certainly enough to get that done. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Nicky G. Calling in second time.
I'm sorry.
I got a question for you.
Calling in for what?
Yeah. For the second time.
For the second time. Okay. Well, let's make this extremely brief. I'm going to let you know that we have a policy here: 1 call per night. So what do you have for me?
Oh, I need to clarify. It's my second time calling ever.
Second time. Okay, second time ever. All right. All right. I think we can certainly take. Well, I appreciate you calling back for the and I'm glad you clarified that. But yeah, thanks for calling. Appreciate it. What's up?
So you had mentioned earlier that you watched the Cleveland Indians a lot. You seem like MLB.
Oh, my goodness. From 1978 up until a couple of years ago, like 2017, I'd buy the Major League Baseball package. And yes, oh, my goodness. I knew everybody on the roster, knew their stats, knew everything about the Indians. Yes. Devoted, diehard fan.
I wanted to ask you a question.
Sure.
So I see a lot of comments and arguments for doing away with divisions in baseball, because people are really upset that an 88-win team in the Braves won it this year.
Wait a minute. Are
And
you
that
asking
forced
me a
essentially-
baseball question on the night of the conference championship games in college football?
It leads to the same argument in college football.
Okay,
So there's a
go
point
ahead.
about-
All right, go ahead. I was going to say, call me back in May because probably 100 people are going to jump off this live stream at any moment. All right, go right ahead.
No. So they want to do it with divisions because, you know, ultimately because the Dodgers didn't win their division, they were a wild card team, which means they had to be the away team and play, 4 games in Atlanta ultimately. But the argument I think that I saw in the chat mostly was Iowa not really earning a spot, and so they want to do away with divisions, and in that case you'd get a rematch between you get a rematch between Michigan and Ohio State.
True. Yes.
How would you feel about that? Would you want to do away with that? Obviously, you get another shot at Michigan, and it's really hard to beat a really good team twice. So I think there's some validity to that. But how do you feel about it?
Okay. So I don't have an issue with the divisions in college football. It is what it is, and but I understand. So there's a difference. Sometimes I'm presented an argument where I think the other side is ridiculous, and obviously I will argue my point and just discount the other side. In this case, I understand the people that say we need to get rid of divisions because we would like to put each conference in a position to play the 2 best teams in the championship game. I understand the argument. I don't necessarily, I'm not, it's just not a fervent campaign of mine. There are a lot of things that I believe need to be corrected in college football before division formats. I don't have an issue with it. But I understand the thought that, let's say Michigan's the best team in the Big Ten and Iowa might be, we could have an argument that they're like the 5th or 6th best team in the Big Ten. There's even an argument that Iowa only made the Big Ten championship game because they played a easier schedule than Wisconsin, who beat them by 3 touchdowns. And just because Wisconsin had to play Penn State and Michigan and had a tougher non-division schedule, and obviously again beat Iowa head-to-head, that shoot, Iowa might have been the 5th best team in the Big Ten. But for some reason, I can't really explain it. I don't have an issue with the divisions. I have an issue with the scheduling in the conferences. I don't think it's fair or just or equal. I have a formula that would make it more equitable. But I understand that. We did have a rematch, or I'm sorry, we could have had a rematch in the Big 12 championship game that would have duplicated that back-to-back scenario with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State playing back-to-back weeks.
Right.
But yes,
So,
in the Big Ten,
I'm
to your point, I don't think anybody wants to stray from tradition and have Ohio State, Michigan play on a different week of the season. So there would be the potential of them playing back-to-back weeks. You could.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go through the whole thought process, but I do understand people's perspective on that. Yes. And in baseball, if nobody's aware, the San Francisco Giants won 108 games. They had the best record in baseball. The Los Angeles Dodgers won 107. They had the second best record in baseball, but they played in the same division. So it put the Dodgers at a huge disadvantage going into the playoffs because they had to play a play-in game, even though they had the second best record in the entire league, both leagues. So I get it.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm not a proponent for doing with the division, especially with the way it is now. It's really not even between the conferences. I think if the SEC goes to 16 or adds any more good teams like they seem to be angling towards, maybe go into pods or however they end up doing it, and doing potentially a tournament. I have no idea how you do it with 4 individual subdivisions within the conference. But unless you're able to do that across the board with all the other conferences, you're not playing the same game pretty much, where you only have to play the 9 other teams in your conference as opposed to you're cycling through pods. And there's so many good teams that are about to be in the SEC. So it's not an even argument. So I don't think it's wise. I just wanted to see what your take was on it. But I think that's it. That's all I really had. Thanks for taking the call.
Hey, thank you for the call. Appreciate it. Have a good night. All right. Up next here at the Voice of College Football.
Hey, Mark, it's Jared the Actor. Called a few times.
Yeah, what's going on tonight? Appreciate you calling.
Well, it's not been too great. I'm an Iowa fan, and that was humiliating. I was on the other voice of the Hawkeye the Storm with Corey talking about this, and he predicted 25-20 Iowa, and so him and I were lamenting about that. Just miserable outgoing for Iowa, just hideous. I'm starting to think, because I'm also a Badger fan, does the West Division even make sense anymore? We cannot win. Have we even won? We have not won one title game, right? Since the divisions got realigned.
True.
So should there be a reordering of that, or should we just keep going until things change?
So you have an interesting point there, and I will argue both sides to a certain extent. So that's 2014 through 21. So that's 8-0 for the East. The interesting part of that, though, is that since Minnesota's gotten better, Northwestern's been good for most of that time. Obviously, Nebraska's not been a factor. Anyway, basically, I'll put it on Minnesota as being the one team in the division that's gotten better during that time frame. If you look at the games that are played between the East and the West, it's pretty even. If you look at the regular season games, I've done this. I went through it, I think, last year from the time that the championship game was formatted, East versus West, and it's very close. But the thing is that the best teams are in the East, and the West is more balanced. And then the really horrible teams are in the East, typically Rutgers and Maryland and sometimes Indiana. So the awful teams are in the East, and so they lose a ton of games, where the West is more balanced. So the overall games is fairly close, but the best team has been in the East, so they win the championship game. And truth be known, most of that time, and so the conclusion I came to was, I don't know if this is an East versus West problem, or at the time, just an Ohio State against the rest of the Big Ten problem. Because Ohio State won 5 out of 7 conference championship games. So is it just basically Ohio State's in the East? They're winning all the conference championships. So that's what the deal is.
Can you think of another big Power 5 conference where this dynamic exists?
Yes.
Because I'm not sure. I mean, maybe the ACC or the SEC.
The SEC. Yeah, the SEC East has not won the SEC East. This is how long it's been. The SEC East, aside from, 2017, Georgia beat Auburn. That's the one exception. Other than that, it's been since Urban Meyer in Florida in 2008. So the SEC West is, what is that? 2009 through 21. That's 13 seasons, 12-1 against the East.
Yeah. Okay. And then lastly,
yeah. That's right.
Talked about
that's right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Just lastly, I'm sure you talked about this in your channel, but what are your thoughts on the new, the CFP playoff, and what should that, in your opinion, the new paradigm be with number of teams and, the conference alignments there. Then I'll let you go.
Okay, so basically my thought is that I like everything that was proposed in that 12-team playoff except for the number of teams. I don't have an issue with the 12 teams, and I think that that's actually a decent number in regards to rewarding quality teams and not expanding it too far. But the problem is, and I also like the element of playing on-campus games, and I also like the element because it gives incentive to win late-season games to elevate your ranking. And I also like the element of awarding the buys to the 4 best conference champions, because then that also gives incentive to win the conference championship game. Because if, like in this scenario this year, Georgia could be sitting at 12-0 thinking, we've made the playoff. It doesn't really matter if we win this conference championship game. Oh, yes, it does. Do you want to be traveling to Iowa City in the first round in the middle of December, or do you want to have a bye week and win a conference championship game to get that bye week? So there's your decision. So I like that incentive. The only issue I have, I don't like buys. They do not work, and here's why. If you're in the NFL, the schedules are so comparable that buys are based on reasonable data, factual data, metrics that are valid, because the schedules are so close. So when the Pittsburgh Steelers win a division at 11-5 and the Kansas City Chiefs win a division at 14-2, the Chiefs earned that bye based on playing a very comparable schedule to the Steelers. Probably 7 to 10 of those games are the exact same teams, and the other ones are very comparable in quality. So they earned that bye. I cannot come up with a way in which we can fairly give a bye to certain teams and not other teams. And I've even gone through the playoff era to determine if this 12-team format was applied to all those seasons, how would those buys be awarded? And I could not come up with a fair and just way to do it. And so this is what a bye does for a particular team. Let's say, so in their format, there would be 12 teams selected. 1 through 4 would receive buys. So let's say we've got a decision to make between team number 4 and team number 5, seed 4 and seed 5. Let's say the number 4 team is Ohio State and the number 5 team is Georgia. Okay. Here's the advantage that you have if you're Ohio State as the 4 seed versus Georgia as the 5 seed. Ohio State gets to sit at home, not play the first game. Georgia's got to play the 12th best team in the country. And let's say that's Oregon. So Georgia's got to play a game. Pardon me?
Sorry. No, I'm thinking I'm a fan of Iowa and Badgers. So
yeah,
that's
throw in Iowa.
Okay.
Georgia's got to play Iowa. Okay, so Georgia's got to play Iowa in a 5-12 game. So the obvious advantage is when you don't play, you automatically advance versus the risk of losing, which is roughly 50-50. So that's the obvious. But even beyond that, think about the advantage of having a bye. This is the perfect date to be talking about this. So if in this situation, we're sitting here on Conference Championship Saturday and the selections are going to be made tomorrow, and Ohio State finds out we're number 4, we're sitting at home, we're waiting for the winner of the Georgia-Iowa game. So Georgia and Iowa are going to play on, let's say, December 23rd. And so they've got 3 weeks to prepare. And so for that entire time, if you respect your opponent and they're a really good opponent, well, you've got to be laser focused on that other team. Iowa's got to be laser focused on Georgia. They can't worry about we're going to play Ohio State if we win. They got to prepare for Georgia. So they're going to bust their tails and watch film on Georgia and prepare for Georgia. Okay, they obviously are going to play a tough game against a really good opponent, which is going to risk injury. So they may be missing a player or two for the next game, even if they survive. Number 2, even if they don't have any suffer any major injuries, they're going to get beat up in that game. And then point number 3, which I don't think anyone addresses or talks about, while Georgia and Iowa had to be laser focused on each other for 3 weeks, Ohio State got 3 weeks to study Georgia and Iowa, and then actually get to watch them play to get another film on both of them to prepare for that game. That is an enormous advantage, and I don't think it's fair, so I don't like the buys.
So you're more a fan of the 8-team playoff then? Is it in terms of if that happens?
As a fan of college football, I would love to see 16 teams, but I don't think I don't want to see players extended to 16 games. However many games they would have to play. There's all sorts of theories there and formats that would have to be worked out. But I'm good with 16 teams, but based on what we've seen for the last 7 years, I would want 8 teams. 8 teams would be fine with me, and the 5 conference champions to have automatic berths. And the other question that needs to be answered is the group of 5. I don't like this wishy-washy, they're included, but they're not included. We may include them. They're technically, we consider them, but we really don't. All that business. No. Are they formally included or formally excluded? Make a decision. Include them in the format or exclude them from the format.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, as a fan of a series of teams that are kind of like in that 10 to 15 to 20 range, we're not Alabama fans or Clemson fans typically, or Georgia fans. So we were just kind of looking for that expansion, what happens with that. So it's kind of good to hear your thoughts on how you think that might play out. But
well, think about this.
I think I've too much time, so I'll leave you at that, Mark, and go listen to the show. I'll talk to you later.
Well,
Thank
I appreciate that. And you may want to hear the last comment I make about this before I hang up. I ran through the 12-team playoff and the format that was proposed, and I took it back like 15 years. The one team, and this shouldn't be a big guess for anyone, there's one team that, excluding the year that they did not have a permanent head coach, and that's 2011, there's a team that would have made the playoffs every year since 2004 in a 12-team format. Ohio State would have made 17 consecutive playoffs, except for that one season in 2011 when they were between Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. So you would have that.
Well, that's your team after all, right?
Well, for me, that would be fine, but I don't know if that sits well with other people. And obviously, Alabama and Clemson are a more recent version of that as well. But for Ohio State, that would have extended all the way back to that time period. So, well, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Talk later.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Let me check out the chat here real quick. Don't want to miss any super chats. Thank you so much for sending those in. I appreciate those so much. Clint Eastwood. It is an honor to know that Clint Eastwood watches us on a fairly regular basis, I believe. Mods, post the number. Oh, and go dogs. Okay, so the number's at the bottom of the screen. So it's on this ticker at the bottom of the screen. I did not have it up there for the entire show, so I apologize for that, but it has been up there for a good, I'm guessing, 30 to 45 minutes. So 860-499-3332. And we've got a super chat coming in here from 3 times Unforgiven. K9 to the NFL. Got a Michigan State fan. Is that Kenneth Walker? Is that his number? K9? That's what I'm guessing. To the NFL. Yeah, he can certainly not get beat up carrying the ball 30 times a game at Michigan State anymore and start making money. Yes, he should probably make that move because I don't know that his stock can get any higher. And again, the wear and tear on a running back, we all know what that is. We got Joey here as well. Notre Dame hasn't beaten a team over 6-6 since Purdue. I think no question, Notre Dame's a good team. I'm not downing them. And it has nothing to do with Notre Dame's approach to scheduling even. I've always applauded Notre Dame's approach to scheduling. They schedule difficult. But two things have happened with Notre Dame's schedules that used to be ridiculously hard. I used to be like, Notre Dame, I applaud you. You play difficult teams every week, while the Ohio States of the world are playing Rutgers and Maryland, and the Alabamas of the world are playing Vanderbilt and Arkansas when they were awful. You were playing a tough team every week. I applaud you for intentionally scheduling difficult teams. However, two things have happened. Number one, they signed that ridiculous agreement with the ACC. And the ACC, because they don't have any guts, I'll use that term in place of another term I would use. The ACC, it's just insane to me that they would sign an agreement. Well, can you imagine the Big Ten or the SEC allowing a team to join their conference and play every other sport in the conference except for football? They would never lower themselves to make an agreement like that. They would be completely embarrassed to do anything like. They have self-respect and know their place in the world to say, no, we're a major sports conference. Are you in our conference or not in our conference? You're not going to play field hockey and women's basketball and all this other stuff and not play football. You can't have it both ways. Oh, we're going to sign a little contract and play 5 games a year against you, but you're not in our conference. That was simply because the ACC wanted Notre Dame money, and they wanted those games against Notre Dame to add to their schedule of the Wake Forest and Syracuse and Dukes of the world. But what that's done to Notre Dame's schedule is watered it down, because it used to be USC every year, Stanford, which it still is, those two, but it used to be Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue. Well, they don't play those teams every year anymore. Those games have been replaced with Louisville and Duke and Georgia Tech. Who did Notre Dame play in the ACC this year? Virginia Tech. They suck. North Carolina, major disappointment. Georgia Tech, beyond crap. Awful. They played those 3. They played Florida State. 5-win Florida State. They're no good. And their 5th game, who am I missing? They played Virginia? Yeah, Virginia. Without Brennan Armstrong that game. Wow, they won by 25 points. They played 2 decent teams and 3 horrible teams when they used to be playing better teams. So that's the one thing that's happened to Notre Dame's schedule. Signing with the ACC has declined its schedule. Number 2, some of those powers that they used to play and still play are on hard times, USC and Stanford in particular. You take those 2 in the early 2010s, Jim Harbaugh, David Shaw, Stanford teams, Pete Carroll, and early Lane Kiffin USC teams. So they're going from playing 2 top 10 teams to 2 awful teams. Stanford, my goodness, what has happened to that football program? They're terrible. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Yes, it's Alabama football fan Roll Tide in the chat.
All
Edward.
right. Alabama football fan Roll Tide. I appreciate you so much being here and encouraging everyone to hit the like button and to participate. And I appreciate your comments.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I just want to say I appreciate all you do as well. I just want to talk about Alabama, of course, in the playoffs. I just wanted to say I was just really proud of this Alabama football team today. For example, Georgia had only given up an average of 7 points a game all season. The most points they gave up all season was 17 against Tennessee. And just to give an example of how dominant Alabama was on offense today, Alabama actually scored 24 points in that second quarter. What was impressive about it was the key was Bryce Young didn't get sacked at all. He was making good decisions with the ball, of course. And Alabama did not have one drop that whole game. And what changed the whole complexion of the game when it was 10-0 in the second quarter, when Jamison Williams caught that pass and ran it in for a 67-yard touchdown run, that changed the whole complexion of the game because then it started opening it up for the other receivers. So I just want to say, I think a lot of people don't realize how special of a receiver and player Jamison Williams is. Obviously, he was a great, transfer for Alabama, but he's also great on special teams, on kickoff and punt returns, and he's also our best tackler on special teams. The first possession of the game, Georgia got the ball. He made a huge tackle, physical tackle to open up the game. And I just thought that kind of helped set the tone for the game. As far as the playoff, I think Alabama should clearly be number 1. I think Michigan should be 2, Georgia number 3. Perfect example, Iowa, who was number 13 in the country going in today's game, their offensive team is so shaky. They were down by like 14, 15 points against a 3-8 Nebraska team last week. So Iowa, to me, has a very, very shaky offense. Their quarterback play is very, very shaky. So I feel like, without a doubt, Alabama should be number 1. I was just wondering what you feel on that. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you probably didn't hear my thoughts earlier, but basically that if I was part of the committee or if it was entrusted to me to make the seedings, then I would, of course, do a deep dive. I would really dissect the metrics and the schedule and so forth. So I'm going off the top of my head because I don't think it is clear cut. I think it's close, but I would put Alabama number 1 over Michigan.
Right.
Most likely.
I agree with that. And then you probably would have Georgia number 3 and then Cincinnati number 4.
Yes, clearly.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, and the other thing, too, is that Alabama was actually down to one scholarship running back today.
Yep.
Our Sanders, our running back, because we were so riddled. And then the fact that Alabama was able to still expose Georgia's secondary in the second half when John Mechie was out of the game. And I just think that that was because the games are going to be, more than likely, the games are going to be won in the trenches. So the fact that Alabama protected Bryce Young and he didn't get sacked at all, I think that really was a testament to, them believing in them they could do this. Because when you looked at them last week against Auburn, obviously Alabama struggled, but Nick Saban had his team believing that they could beat Georgia. And that's the biggest thing, because a lot of it is mental. A lot of these teams, if you go into the game feeling that you're not going to be able to win or you have no chance, it's going to carry over onto the field. The last thing is, Mark, and then I'll let you go because I know you got to take other callers. As far as Alabama and Georgia, if they were to meet again in the playoffs, I think it's always a lot harder when you're facing a really good team like Georgia to have to beat them again. So I think that's the biggest challenge too if they did meet again in the playoffs. Do you agree with that? It's always hard to beat a second.
I
good
do.
Team like that back to back.
I think it makes a whole lot of sense, but I would love for somebody to do a deep dive and actually break that down statistically and go through matchups to show that, because it's one of those things that it's a theory and it makes sense. I'm not debating it, but I would actually like to see it proven because it's never been proven.
Right. I see what you're saying. All right. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking my call. Everyone, please hit that likes button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And you do a great job, Mark. Keep up the great work.
Appreciate that so much. Congratulations on tonight's win. And thank you again for the call. I've got an interesting comment here from our guy. Shoot, I've got it covered up so I can't see it. Hang on just a second. From David. So thank you so much for that comment. So Joel Klatt is amazing. So I appreciate that I'm even in that conversation. So I appreciate that. And Joel Klatt is actually brought up by many of you many times. So I'm in no competition with Joel Klatt whatsoever. He played college football at a high level. If you're not aware, as a quarterback at Colorado, he also, because he works for a corporation that obviously pays him a lot of money, he's assigned a game each week. So let's say he's working the Michigan-Wisconsin game. And so he's watching game tape on Michigan-Wisconsin primarily that week. But basically his job is to go all over the place and just talk football. And so that's what he does. And he studies game film and statistics, and he knows what he's talking about and talks to players and coaches. These broadcasting teams will go out to the site of the game. Let's say it's Wisconsin, Michigan, playing on Saturday, of course. And Klatt and Gus Johnson, I'm guessing, would show up at the site to visit with the two teams, like on a Thursday, and we'll meet with the head coaches. And that's one of the reasons why. So don't be fooled. These analysts are extremely good, but they are also given hints and direction about game plans. Okay. And there is a unwritten rule, and they're sworn to secrecy. So they are given some level of direction to know what to look for. Okay. And Klatt's the best in the business. And there are some other really good guys out there, obviously, doing these games. But Klatt's amazing. But we do two different things to a certain extent. Yes, we both analyze college football, but he's working that angle all week. He's studying all week. Actually, I'm a little jealous because I would love to devote all my time to studying college football, but he is working for someone. So basically they're taking care of him, as opposed to I'm building a business. So I've got to devote much of my week to things that don't involve college football, or preparing for college football, or filling my head with knowledge, doing things to try to promote what we're doing, and trying to sell it and work on technology. And I've got to do all the business building of it. So that kind of takes me away from actually reading as much as I would like to, and watching as much as I would like to, and all those things. But that's very kind of you, and I appreciate that. But I have the utmost respect for Joel Klatt, and would love to have him on here at some point. That's like, also understand, and I don't think this would be a complete revelation to people. Keep saying that they want to call. The number's down at the bottom of the screen and has been for at least an hour. 860-499-3332. I've seen at least 10 people say, I want to call, I want to call, I want to call. Well, call. Okay. Let's also understand that when you watch, and I know this from working in production rooms, particularly at ESPN for 19 years, and being in production rooms and standing behind a director and a producer, and with all the staff there, that there are some of the people that you know and watch are extremely knowledgeable and amazing at what they do. Others, So understand, for those people that are they have a producer in their ear. So I'm wearing an earpiece just so I can run this audio that I'm taking the calls on into my ear. But the talent on these networks have an earpiece in, and they have a director, and that's typically given direction for camera shots and other directives like that. But generally they're hearing from the producer. The producer will feed them information. Like if they take a call, like here, if I had a producer and I was taking these calls, and somebody called in and said, Mark, this Iowa team reminds me of the '85 Hawkeyes that went to the Rose Bowl and beat Michigan 12-10 in that 1-2 matchup. And let's say I was like a deer in headlights because I didn't know what you were talking about. Well, producer would be like, yeah, Chuck Long was the quarterback of that Iowa team, and he finished second in the Heisman Trophy voting to Bo Jackson. So I'd be able to say, yeah, Chuck Long was amazing for that team. He almost won the Heisman Trophy. And so you got to understand that there are producers feeding facts and information to talent through their ear. Because I have witnessed it firsthand. Appreciate the super chat coming in from Greg. Don't worry about arguing back. We were all thinking what you were. I think that must have been the Notre Dame guy who was not a Notre Dame fan, but was arguing for Notre Dame against Georgia. So thank you for that. Also, super chat coming in from Seth. Seth, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. Love you, Mark. You are truly the voice of college football, and so many of us enjoy and respect your opinions. Well, thank you for that. That's all they are, opinions. And I hope I at least show everyone that while I try to be knowledgeable, and I believe I am knowledgeable and have a certain take on all this, if I don't know something, I'll tell you, I don't know that. I had somebody call me during the off season and want me to give my take on Marshall's defense. And I had to tell him, I don't know anything about Marshall's defense. I have not watched a Marshall football game for more than a few plays in forever. I don't know anything about Marshall's defense. Thanks for asking, but I don't know. So I appreciate that. And super chat. I believe there's another one or two coming up, and I always want to make sure I get these. Certified Clapaholic. Is that what I'm seeing there? I am certified Clapaholic. Why will college football playoff purposely avoid Bama, Georgia in round one? Clapaholic, they shouldn't. They should just seed the teams the way they should be seeded. That's what they should do, but they won't. They will do their best to avoid it. There could be a situation in which it could not be avoided, but not this year. This can be avoided, so they'll avoid it. I would be stunned. That would be the one thing that would surprise me tomorrow if they avoided, or if they failed to avoid, a Georgia Alabama first round matchup. They don't want people to be turned off by, number one, there possibly being a perception that, okay, you're automatically putting an SEC team in the championship game, number one. Number two, we just watched this game. Why do we want to watch it again? It's just not good TV. Another super chat coming in. Appreciate this coming in from Jared. Thank you so much for the super chat. How do we fix the Big Ten West? How many times has a team won it? Go Blue. Well, you might have asked that before we took the call from the one guy that was talking about the Big Ten Western Division, which has lost 8 consecutive, the only 8 East versus West Big Ten championship games. 0 for 8. But I explained at the time that the comparison of the Big Ten West Division wins during the regular season versus the East, it's very close. It's very close between the East and the West. Just the best team has always been in the East. And that best team has typically been Ohio State. 5 of the last 7 years coming in. And I think if you reasonably look at the Big Ten, even the 2 years Ohio State did not make it, they were the best team. So it's been more of an Ohio State problem that the Big Ten has had, more than East and West. But this year it was Michigan, best team by far over the West. What can they do to fix it? Well, they could change the divisions, but it would no longer be the East and the West, because it would not be the East and the West, because they've taken all the West teams and all the East teams. It is clearly split geographically. So if they wanted to get away from the East and the West, they could do that. And that's what they started with, the legends and the leaders. And people made fun of that, and nobody could remember it, nor could anyone remember who was in what division. All right. I am going to, after the show, determine my top 25 that actually makes sense and probably release that overnight since we've got this ridiculous playoff rankings deal coming up. Greg is saying, put the 3 eligible conference champs at the top: Alabama, Michigan, Cincinnati, then Georgia. Okay, fine. I guess. You can look at it that way. You won a conference, we'll give you the extra spot there. I think we're looking at 2 different levels of football, though. We are looking at, unfortunately, 2 different levels of football. Cincinnati played Tulsa and Tulane all year, and Navy, and Georgia played Arkansas and Clemson and Tennessee and obviously Alabama in a championship game. So Joey says division's got to go. Iowa is like the 4th best team in the Big Ten. Yeah, maybe. Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Michigan State. They're probably 5th, and maybe even Penn State's better. They might be 6th. Purdue. Michigan might have been playing the 7th best team in the Big Ten tonight. Purdue beat them by 3 scores. Minnesota's probably nearly as good. Minnesota beat Wisconsin. I think it's Michigan, it's Ohio State, and then there's a drop off, and it's probably Wisconsin and Michigan State or somewhere there, and then Iowa, Minnesota, Purdue. I can't separate those teams. Iowa beat Minnesota by 5 points at home. Minnesota beat Purdue, and Purdue beat Iowa by 3 scores. Like, Iowa's somewhere between the 4th and the 7th best team in the Big Ten, but they are not in the top 3. I think we can easily state that. I would put them 5th or 6th. So it's not the best look for the Big Ten. It's not the best look for a championship game, and it's really not doing much in determining the championship. And I know that's hard for Iowa fans to hear, but I think that can be proven out through the 13 games that they played. All right, we've got Christopher here. I'm sure you've answered this question before, but is the way the helmets are arranged behind you mean anything? Absolutely not. 0. They just sit there. And what happens is, if I've got to record at 1 o'clock on Monday with a Clemson guy, I'll say, okay, let's put Clemson here, make sure it's right over my shoulder. And then at 1:30, I've got the Michigan guy, and maybe it's being covered up, so I put it down here. Yeah, that's all that means. And, we were talking so much about LSU and Notre Dame with the Brian Kelly situation, as I did this for a few live streams, because it was all it was about nothing but Brian Kelly and Notre Dame and LSU. Is boom, did that and cleared out the other helmets. Yeah, the helmets mean nothing. They are just that. Let's put Florida. Let's put them in here. Let's put the worst possible teams we can in the front. Florida, North Carolina. Kent State almost won the MAC championship, but lost today. Notre Dame's too good. Move them back. How about, here's a good one. Washington. Let's put them in front. Let's take Michigan out. They made the playoff. Put Florida State up there. There we go. How about that? Oh, here's a good one. Texas. Let's put Texas in here. Right there's good. Oh, USC. They're horrible too. I got a lot of horrible teams here. USC just lost to Cal. That's how awful they are. But thanks for the question on the helmets, and thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Yeah, that's the helmets mean nothing. People, though, are often fascinated with the helmet display and what helmets are getting the most airtime. Let me catch up to some comments here coming in before I take the next phone call. I don't want to miss a super chat. Let me catch up with the next one. Man, I'm going through all sorts of comments. Here we go. We've got Justin Burr. Justin, thank you so much for your contribution. Appreciate that so much. Michigan sure does look good. I'll be rooting for them in the playoffs. They do look good. The last 2 weeks, they've looked amazing. Even in their loss, that was questionable. They looked great for almost 3 quarters in that game. All right. The heck time is it? 3 o'clock in the morning. Good Lord. All right. But I guess we're going strong. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, Mark. This is Dalton from T-Town, first-time caller.
Hey, how's it going tonight?
Doing well. I'm a Alabama fan, so.
Awesome.
But first of all, I've been watching for over 2 years, and for some reason, I was always under the impression that those helmets behind you were full real life size. So that just completely blew my brain.
Oh, okay.
Took them up with your hand.
That's funny. No,
but
I've got one that's a full size. So I'll hold this up and you'll see it in about 10 seconds. So there's one. If you can see it right now. And I actually explained the other day why I had one of these, but I won't go through that whole explanation again. But there's a reason why that was given to me.
Right. I was just calling in, first of all, to make a little friendly counter to a caller I heard about 2.5 hours ago who was saying something about that there was a good possibility that Georgia was came in unmotivated or something along those lines, I believe.
Yeah.
And that just sounds pretty ridiculous to me, to be honest. If you just look in the past, I mean, decade, right? The last time Georgia beat Alabama was, what, 2007? I mean, every game in the last 6 or 7 games, Georgia has actually been ranked in the top 10. I think 7 of the 8 games they were ranked in the top 4 when Alabama beat them. So every game that Alabama has won in the last decade against Georgia has been a game of consequence for Georgia. It wasn't, some regular season game where, there was nothing on the line for them. Obviously losing to a team, in games like that for several years in a row, several games in a row, that's just, it really takes the heart out of the fan base, and, to say that they came into the game, with a notion that, that they, were lacking motivation, I think is just nonsense. I mean, it's probably possible that, they went 12-0. There was kind of this, aurora around them this year that they were unbeatable. This defense on paper was the greatest we've seen, at least in my lifetime. I can say that for sure. 7 points a game, it's wild. So that's definitely possible, but motivation, I think that's just nonsense. I mean, Alabama has cost Georgia, at least 2 national titles in the last 2 years. I mean, the best game I've ever been to in my life was probably the 2012 SEC title game when, it went down to the wire. Aaron Murray, I believe, was the quarterback then. And, I believe Georgia would have killed Notre Dame in the championship. I think that was the actual national title, in my opinion. So, we've cost them at least 2 national titles in the last decade. So I'm sure that, the fan base at least has been, just incredibly, they almost hate us as much as they hate Florida at this point. I mean, after the 7 losses in a row, I believe it is now. So to say that the players were lacking motivation, I think it's a little ridiculous. But I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, unless you really want me to expound on it, I think I've covered this ground quite a bit tonight in regards to motivation. So, yeah, I don't necessarily believe that's the case, because why would you want to see Alabama in the playoff? So I've talked quite a bit about it, so I don't necessarily want to go on
Exactly.
here.
Exactly. Yeah. But the notion that Georgia somehow overrated is also ridiculous. I mean, I've seen several people say that multiple times in the chat tonight. I mean, Alabama was an equally talented team. I mean, it's not like, Cincinnati just knocked out Georgia. These teams are about as equal in talent as it comes. I mean, if you look at the college team talent composite in 24/7 sports, they're pretty much dead on. And it's clear that Alabama's O-line play is what made the difference. I mean, Bryce Young didn't play any different. I believe you said something like that earlier. And Georgia could easily be the second best team, or they could be the best team, and they might beat Alabama again. So people that are saying they're overrated is just ridiculous. And I don't know. Someone called in earlier and said something about Notre Dame getting in over Georgia. That's people out of their mind if they think Notre Dame's a better team or even deserves to be in over Georgia after the season they just had. It's wild to me, but yeah, I think Michigan Georgia is going to be a great game, and I know people are probably bummed out that Alabama's in again, or most college football fans that are Alabama fans, but you have Michigan. They've never been in the college football playoff. You're going to have Cincinnati. This is what people have been begging for, and you're going to have Georgia. Georgia's only been in there once. People don't realize that. I know it seems like they've been in there more often because of how dominant they've been the last several years. Since Kirby Smart came, but they've only been in there once, so people are still getting what they wanted. New fresh teams in the playoffs, and I think it's going to be a good game.
All right, sir. Anything else?
That's all. I enjoy the show. Like I said, it's the first time calling in. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Have a good night.
Yeah, have a good night. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
To the man that gives college football its voice, the voice of the people, Mark Rogers. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for this man. Hardest working man in college football.
Well, I want to lose that title. I want to lose that one as fast as possible. So we want to go from hardest working to something else. So the richest, could we go there? Let's go that route. But the hardest, I want to give up the hardest working title. Don't need that anymore. So let's do away with that one.
Well, if it's the way that it should work, as we hope it should work, hard work should lead to wealth.
There you go.
Let's hope that takes you down that path, Mark Rogers. I know we're both a little bit bummed about our alma mater losing today. Can't read, can't write, Kent State took it on the chin today, right, Mark?
They did. Can't say that I was that interested in the game, but yes, they did lose.
Yeah, they beat Northern Illinois earlier in the year. By the way, did you do a MAC preview for the title game there, Mark?
Absolutely, we did.
Okay.
Heck yeah.
I missed that one. Okay. All right. I wanted to talk about the championship game, so I'm going to chime in. I'm going to echo what I said the other night about the Georgia-Alabama game. I did wonder what Georgia would look like once they faced a team that was really good at the forward pass. Because I just wondered how many teams they met this year that had even good to pretty good passing games. It'd be interesting to see how the breakdown statistically of the really good passing games that they've gone up against are. I don't know if you've done a deep dive on that one, Mark.
Well, somebody called me here in the last half hour to 45 minutes trying to trumpet Baylor as having played a more difficult schedule than Georgia, and I quickly put that to bed. But if we're just talking offensively, how many teams in the country have a great passing attack?
A really good point.
So I don't know how many teams are going to run into that can really throw the ball outside of the obvious.
Yeah.
Alabama, Ohio State, Pitt? Can they really throw the ball?
It's not bad.
Wake. Oklahoma didn't even throw the ball well. So I'm not even going to include them. So I don't know who they're really going to face that.
No, go ahead, Mark.
Again, and the only reason I take on the question from that standpoint is it's like we go through this season each and every year, and people will criticize certain teams and say, who did they play? And anytime you bring up, run down their schedule of who they played and who you think is a quality opponent, they just say, well, who have they beaten? Who have they beaten? Well, there's only so many teams in the country that don't lose games. So we can kind of go chasing around in terms of trying to determine. I think Georgia's defensive performance this year has been ridiculously good. They didn't play Ohio State, but only 12 teams played Ohio State. And outside of Ohio State and a couple other teams, one was Alabama, I don't know that there are that many prolific passing attacks out there. Arkansas can throw the ball pretty well, and so can Tennessee, and they clamped down on them.
That's true. What would have been interesting is if they would have gotten Ole Miss. I think that would have been interesting if Corral would have had any success throwing the ball against their defense, because Ole Miss had a pretty good passing game this year, and they did not catch Ole Miss this year, if I'm not mistaken, right, Mark?
No.
So that would have been interesting, because that's where I was kind of going with when I was giving you the analysis the other night. I used the classic example of the 85 Bears. You know, who's the only team that cracked the code against the 85 Bears was Marino and the Dolphins with a great passing game. And that's what I was going to say is, and even Uncle Lou acknowledged to you in this conversation that traditionally the teams that have been winning national titles the last few years, guess what? They've had a quarterback and a few good wide receivers. So, I mean, that's not really a coincidence. I mean, when you start to break it down.
Yeah, I guess that would be the case since what, 2016?
Yeah.
Before that, you're looking at Cardale Jones, Jake Coker, people like that winning national championships. AJ McCarron. So
Greg McElroy.
Yeah. But for the last 5 years, sure.
Well, 5 years is a pretty good sample size. I mean, you can pick up on a trend after 5 years, I would think. That's, you know, so, and you know what, that's just the direction of football nowadays. So that's, and by the way, I must say this about watching this game. Maybe Uncle Lou's, because he was in the conversation with you, I think he was, you know, trumpeting JT Daniels and his, so now he's making JT Daniels out to be, you know, Tom Brady and Joe Montana had a baby, but maybe I watched JT Daniels play Clemson earlier in the year, and I wasn't really that impressed, but I don't know if he would have made a difference today, but, you know.
Yeah, somebody had called earlier about JT Daniels possibly being somebody that Kirby Smart could have gone to in relief, and I can see that point. But he did not make that move. Because
the last, you know, it's interesting, Mark. I called you after the Alabama-Georgia game last year, and you know what? Interesting enough, same score when they played in Tuscaloosa, 41-24, and Stetson Bennett did not look good in that game either.
Yeah, I have trouble putting too much blame on Stetson Bennett. I think he deserves some of it. He's not Bryce Young. He's not Bryce Young. Alabama has a coaching and quarterback advantage over Georgia. The other elements of the team are almost dead even from a talent perspective. Now, Georgia was playing much better football than Alabama. I did a comparison of 4 common opponents, the only 4 common opponents they had, and there was no comparison between the way Alabama played against them and the way Georgia did. Georgia dominated all of them. Alabama scraped by all of them. So that would lead you to believe that Georgia was the better team, but Georgia's not the better team. They had the better season, but at quarterback and apparently on the sideline, they're not as well equipped. But yeah, Stetson Bennett is a top, I don't know, what, 20 or 30 quarterback in the country, and that's what he is, and that's what he was today. And he made one awful mistake for a pick six. But other than that, I don't know that he played that horribly.
No, I mean, he had two bad picks in the second half. I thought he had a pretty good first half in watching the entire game. But in the second half, I think things did get away from him. You know, he did not play. I mean, because the two picks were critical. One was in the red zone and the other was a pick six. So,
yeah, I don't know that the one was, it wasn't a great decision, but I don't know that it was his fault. If the receiver, Bowers, would have run his route, he probably would have caught the ball, but he stopped.
You talk about the red zone pick that he had when they were inside the 20, when it was 30. Yeah, okay. I agree with you. I mean, he could have completed his route a little bit better. I mean, the pick six was awful. So, I mean, yeah, I just, you know, it's going to be interesting to see with them going forward. I will say this. If they catch TTUN in that 2-3 game, that's two kind of similarly, you know, built teams. It'll be interesting to see which quarterback in that game could do a better job of taking care of the ball and making those, you know, few big throws that they're going to have to make in that game. Because I'm thinking, Mark, that's the 2-3 matchup. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would think that is the way the committee's going to go. Sure.
Okay. I did want to get to the Big Ten title game, and you know what? No surprise there. I think could have locked Iowa inside Lucas Oil Stadium for about 3 hours by themselves, and I don't know if they could have scored 2 touchdowns. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah, I think your estimation, what did you have them as you did a breakdown here just a second ago, the 6th best team in the Big Ten, maybe the 7th best team in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think they're somewhere between 4 and 7, and I've got them more in the 5 or 6 range. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that one. You know what? I think that it's going to be an interesting playoff. I will say, you know, I think everybody's, you know, wanted to draw Cincinnati because they see them as nothing more than the sacrificial lamb, which, you know, is it just Cincinnati being happy to be there as the 4th seed then pretty much?
Well, I'm not going to speak for Cincinnati, but it seems like their fans, from what I'm hearing, are in that mode.
Okay. I mean, I'm just, you know, I mean, any of those 3 teams, I think, would be happy to draw Cincinnati. That's why I was going with that. Seems to be the view in the chat, by the way. But I will say, I do find that 2-3 matchup to be interesting. I think it'd be a close game, but you know, I just wonder which team can implement their own will with the running game, and then which quarterback can do a better job of taking care of the ball and maybe hitting those 2 or 3 big plays. Should be an interesting playoff. At least that game could be interesting. The Cincinnati-Alabama game, I think, could reek of when Alabama caught Michigan State in 2015, and that game got ugly. You remember that one, Mark?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do.
By the way, I do think the Buckeyes draw Utah in the Rose Bowl, and I am not real happy about that matchup. I think that could be a tough one, depending on how many Buckeyes sit out. But what are you thinking? Is that look like to be the Rose Bowl matchup?
Yep, I think that's the one. And I would think that Utah is going to be highly motivated to play well.
I think so, too. They're a well-coached team. They're really good in the trenches, so that's going to be a tough matchup. So
and they're going to be slapped as like a 10-point underdog. So they're probably going to be motivated.
You think the line's going to be up to 10, really?
I think it's going to be pretty sizable. Who was Ohio State not a mammoth favorite against this year?
Well, that's true. That's true. It's a good point. But you know what, though? I actually think Utah could be a very, very difficult matchup just because they're a team that's strong in the trenches.
Oh, I'm not debating you on that point. I'm just telling you what I think the Vegas line's going to be.
That'll be interesting to see if it comes out that high. All right. Well, good job tonight, Mark. You take care of yourself, and we'll look forward to. Are you gonna do a live stream tomorrow after the playoffs?
During the playoff rankings, yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, Mark. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Bye bye.
Why don't we make these two calls the last two of the night? I want to make sure I get this super chat in right here. So the deal is that we can only have so many people on hold at once. So yeah, you may call in and it may be busy because it can only hold the person that I'm on the phone with and three total calls. So Austin here, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. I apologize that the number was busy. So Austin is saying, why does Georgia deserve to be in over Baylor after losing by 3 scores today? Baylor has 3 top 15 wins. Georgia has 0 top 15 wins. Austin, I went through an exhaustive. I don't want to discount your question, especially when you include the super chat there. But I don't know that everyone, and I don't know that I have the mental capacity nor the patience to go through what I went through an entire, go back a half hour in this conversation. And so you may be able to do that right this second, or you may have to wait until the video posts. And I was on with a caller who asked that same exact question. He wanted to size up Baylor and Georgia. And I think I came up with a very definitive argument for Georgia. I don't think it's that close. Now, if you want to award Baylor based on a conference championship, that's another matter. But if you want to look at the two resumes, forget these stupid rankings, first of all. When you talk about rankings, okay, this college football playoff selection committee, we can talk rankings all over the place. But let's look at quality of teams. Okay. So look at that. And where the Baylor 15, top 15 with Oklahoma, BYU. And if anybody wants to think that BYU could survive long in the SEC, yeah. All right. Any other super chats coming in? But again, I had that conversation, went exhaustively through the two schedules of both Baylor and Georgia, and the dominance of the two against their schedules is laughable. All right, Jared, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Appreciate that so much. People are arguing over if Michigan should be 1 or 2. Is this real life? It's actually not real life. If we really want to talk about it, we have guys that put on helmets that are made out of what? Titanium? What are those things made out of? I don't know. That run into each other and wrestle over a piece of pigskin, a cowhide that's blown up with air. So no, we're not dealing with real life here. We're dealing with fun and games. It is not real life. We do this to get away from real life. All right. Then we got Janeth here. Great show, Mark. Please hit that like button. Thank you, Janeth. I appreciate that so much. Keep up the great work, Mark. Janeth, thank you so much for being here. I don't believe that I've seen your handle before, but we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for that contribution. All right. Any others coming in that I've missed? I hate to miss a super chat. Uncle, I'm just here for George. Okay, Uncle Rico. Uncle Rico has shown up quite a bit in the live streams in recent, weeks, months? I'm always encouraged to see new people, and Uncle Rico has been a standby here recently. So thanks for finding the show and being here. Appreciate that. Anybody else I need to get to? Yes. as soon as we're done, I'm going to have to work on the top 25 that actually makes sense. So you know what my excuse for anybody that complains about my top 25 and doesn't think that it's valid, I'm going to be like, well, I was dead tired. I just, all right. Andy Case, great show. Thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate that. I can't imagine that it's a great show at this point because I don't really know what's coming out of my mouth at this point at 3:30 in the morning. Who else? Anybody else in the live chat? I don't believe so. I will continue to look for those super chats. Thank you so much for those. Next up on the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's George.
Hey, George.
Somebody in the chat just said, take one more call just for content. That's funny. That's funny. After 4 hours.
Cheryl's tired. Jared's tired.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. HSM Dobbs said, George. Hey, Dobbs. Mark, there's some super chats you haven't got to yet. You want to spin through there and see if you can find them?
I'm trying. I've been looking for them.
You got Uncle Rico. He said, I'm just here for George. You got that one already, right?
I got that one. Oh, Andy Case.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah,
I think I came across that one, though. All right, I'll keep looking. And you just talk, George. What do you got for us?
While you're looking, LGB, it's not a super chat, but it's a fair question. He asked, when is your bedtime?
Basically, I take a nap about 5 in the morning to about 6.
Nice.
We go.
I was going to tell him you sleep in 2 or 3 hour periods. You never get REM.
Yeah, we're going to work on that very soon.
I like that guy's question about Baylor having beat 3 top 10 teams or 15 teams and Georgia beating 0. And that was a good one. That was Uncle Rico. Who was that? I'd have to slide back.
It was that. The only thing is that I had a caller. It's probably been 2 hours ago that asked me the same thing, and we exhaustively went through the Baylor schedule and the Georgia schedule. And I thought it was very clear of why Georgia is much better than Baylor, and so I'm not going through that again.
Okay, but he said, why does Georgia deserve to be in over Baylor after losing by 3 scores today? Baylor has 3 top 15 wins. Georgia has 0 top 15 wins.
I explained all that. Forget those stupid rankings for one thing. Let's start there. Baylor didn't, or
that wouldn't work.
Don't lose to TCU. Let's start there. Don't lose to a horrible TCU team. Don't do that.
That's true.
Okay, I didn't miss any of these. I don't think I missed any super chats. Everyone I'm hitting, I've already posted and talked about.
Okay, this is on a side note.
Yes.
But there's a saying, laughter is the best medicine, right?
Yes.
I have laughed so much today about this Georgia, Alabama, Stetson Bennett thing, Kirby Smart thing. I could have been dying of cancer this morning, and I would be totally healed in running a marathon, doing the Ironman triathlete, something. I'm so giddy. I can't stop laughing.
It is a bit comical that we just keep seeing this over and over and over and over. It's Alabama. They do what they do. And it's Georgia. They do what they do.
And I know, it was just great. Good entertainment. Stetson Bennett and Kirby Smart were both caught on camera in the fourth quarter picking their nose, sticking their finger in their nose. Somebody call Athens and tell them about this. Don't do that anymore. That's gross. This looks bad for the whole program. Nose picker Stetson Bennett. It's on national TV.
Oh, it was Stetson Bennett. I missed that. Well, he threw a pick 6 as well. So there you go.
Here, you saw the game, right?
Yes, I watched the SEC championship game. I did. Every play.
Okay. just in case. I thought maybe you might have fallen asleep, but after last night. But in the third quarter, there was a bad snap, and it almost went over Stetson's Bennett helmet. Remember, and he fumbled it. That there was a foul, so they didn't lose the fumble. Somebody was offside or something.
Got hit in the helmet. Yeah.
If you go back and watch that, it was like he almost got knocked over backwards by the ball. It was just,
it is funny because yeah, you see that from time to time when the quarterback gets surprised by the snap and it just hits them, but then they recover. It's just hits them and they don't get completely startled. Yeah, like he get hit, he's falling back and he's like looking up in the air.
It was just hilarious. I'm like, the game's on the line, man. Come on, get your shit together. I'm thinking for sure JT Daniels is coming in for the next snap. But no, the hilarity just got better and better and better. And then he just started running 2-yard plays. You could tell they just gave up like 5 minutes to go in the game. The Bird's word says, George, the legend. That's good. Hey, that yard gnome business we were going to go into, it's not too late. What if Kirby plays Stetson again and he wins the whole damn thing? We still have a shot at this yard gnome business. It's going to take a miracle. Stetson's going to have to win it all. Last night we were joking. I said Bryce Young for Heisman and all that. The Alabama guys were all talking in the chat. But today someone made a comment on a comment I made on that video you made a couple of days with Uncle Lou. You and him were together a couple of days ago. And I said in that video in my comments, in the comment section, I said, the storyline of this year will be Georgia loses the national title because they don't have a quarterback. And I'll be damned. How prophetic is that? Like, we just all witnessed it. I know I'm not the only one that ever said that, but still. You there?
I am here, George. I am barely here. I think I'm going to take the last call, and I got to knock out my top 25. So I got a lot of work to do.
Right.
So we're going to get right to it.
And you got to look for super chats. All right, later.
Yeah. All right, George. Have a good one.
Have a good night.
Last call of the night. Let's get it on here. The voice of college football. Hello.
Hey, Mark. This is Chris from San Antonio. How you doing?
Hey, Chris. I'm doing well. What's going on?
Oh, not much. This is more of a long-time, first-time caller here. I definitely want to say I enjoy your content, and I enjoy subscribing to both you and Steve D. I love the banter between the two, all the content that you discuss, not just with the game and the rivalry, but just the way you both, you make sense of everything. You use analytics, I appreciate that for what I do.
Thank you.
I definitely want to also say I'm having all real Michigan fans everywhere. That previous caller who was a self-proclaimed Michigan fan, who somehow in his delusional state of mind thought Notre Dame was in. No, absolutely not. That was really good, content. That was a good exchange. And, reason and logic usually tends to prevail. And I like how you presented that in the conversation. And I know it's been a long day, so I'm not going to keep it much longer here. Who do you think currently, with everything you've seen thus far in the CFP, who do you think presents the most challenge? Being I'm a Michigan fan, who do you think presents the most challenge to them going forward?
To Michigan fans?
To actually, as a Michigan fan, so there's bias in here, but who do you think in the CFP right now presents the most challenge to Michigan?
Well, Alabama and Georgia are the two most talented teams in the country. So it's almost a dead even talent evaluation for those two teams. They're the two best teams by any measurement of talent. But quarterback is the most important position. Bryce Young. Coaching, especially in this scenario with preparation involved for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Obviously, I say that Alabama is stocked with a coaching staff that's exceptional and a guy that's leading the charge that's the best of all time. Bam.
What else is new, right? Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. I almost wonder if somehow, some way we actually do make it, to the final. I wonder if just not having to face one of the two super powerhouses from the SEC, and then having to face the other. And I just think it might be too much to overcome if I'm being realistic. But definitely hope for the best, kind of the deal. But thanks again for taking the call. I appreciate it. And like I said, really great content. Love listening in. And you have a good night, bud.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks so much for calling in. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. And congratulations on the big win tonight. All right, everyone. We have come to the very end of the line with Alabama football fan Roll Tide, reminding everyone to hit the like button. Please do that. Mark, great show as usual. Hit that like button, everyone. I am going to work on the top 25, everyone all together. That actually makes sense. Briant, I believe I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I hope I am. I apologize if I'm not. Do you believe that the College Football Committee has an SEC bias? Feel they are going to do anything to avoid a Bama and Georgia rematch? Yes, they are going to avoid it, and it's not going to be difficult for them to avoid that. They'll put Bama 1, Georgia 3. And even if they sneak Cincinnati into 3, then they put Bama 2 and Georgia 4. It's easy to do either way. It can be justified too. It's not like it's a reach. It's not like they're going to be criticized. They've got a few different options there. I believe that there's an SEC bias, not just from the committee. I just think that there is one, and the SEC has largely earned it through the years. So I don't know if you want to call that a bias, but the SEC has been the best league in college football for at least 15 years. That's just, I don't want to call that a fact, but by any reasonable measurement, or if you put all the measurements into play, it's just, that's the way it is. It's not even debatable. Now, is the SEC the best league right this second, right now, this year? That is somewhat debatable. But at the top, it's not debatable, and that's what matters when it comes to the playoff. So the Big Ten or some other conference, and it would be the Big Ten, could have a argument from 1 through 14 or 1 through 7, the top half. But the top half or 1 through 14 doesn't matter when we get to playoff time. All that matters is that you got the best team, or in this case, the 2 best teams. And the SEC obviously has an unfair advantage in that they're going to have 2 teams selected, so they're going to have half the field. So is there an SEC bias? Yes, but that has been perpetuated by the SEC continuing to back it up. So during this BCS and playoff era, the SEC has won by far the most national championships, but they've also been given, and when I say given, I mean basically somewhat earned, but also been given the most opportunities. So that is played into their ability to win the most when they've been given the most opportunities. If you look at BCS championship games and college football playoff appearances, the SEC has by far been given the most spots in those games. Well, they've taken advantage of it by winning the games. So that's to their credit, but also they've been given more opportunities than all the other leagues by far. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy to a certain extent. There you go. All right, everyone. Appreciate everybody being here. It was a great show tonight because of you, not because of me. I just sit here and answer your questions and respond to your comments. And so thank you so much for that. We are going to produce the top 25 that actually makes sense, which I actually get a good night's sleep and then I do it the next day, but I don't have that luxury. So we got to knock it out over the next hour or so. So we will do that. It's going to take longer than that though. So we're going to work on the top 25 that actually makes sense for you night owls or people halfway across the world. Expect that to be out in the next hour to 2 hours because we got to do it. And then we will have our watch party back here at noon Eastern time tomorrow, Sunday at noon Eastern time. This is Sunday, right? So in about 8 hours, we'll be back here for the noon playoff rankings unveiling. So see you then. Thank you so much for being here. And yes, tomorrow, noon Eastern time.